Chapter 3262. Only 1,000 points. With the speed at which this god is accumulating points, 1,000 points is nothing. But at this moment, Fu Izue's points increased by 9,000 points. Suddenly, the gap between the two increased by another 10,000 points. Fu Izue also wants to maintain his first place. God Fu has been first 5 times. Isn't it natural for him to be first? That's right. Yap Liangshun is nothing. A newbie wants to challenge Cabinet Master Fu's position. Does he deserve it? The crowd was divided into 2 groups. Some felt that Yap Liangshun would become the new leader. Some felt that Fu Izue would keep his position. Time passed, and it was almost noon. In another 15 minutes, the Carnage leaderboard would be cleared. However, Yi Liangshun's points had never increased since then. Many people who supported Yap Liangshun shook their heads. Fu Izue's supporter was arrogant. Cabinet Master Fu didn't increase his points because he didn't want to bother with a small fry. Do you really think that Yap Liangshun can compete with Cabinet Master Fu? As he spoke, he patted the leaderboard. Look, the leaderboard is about to be updated. Everyone, who do you think will be first this round? Cabinet Master Fu. Cabinet Master Fu. Yap Liangshun is nothing. How can he compete with Cabinet Master Fu? Amidst the hustle and bustle, a red light lit up on the Carnage leaderboard and it started to flicker. Everyone knew that it was a countdown to the leaderboard's update. Once the red light stopped flickering, the 1,000 Carnage heroes would be decided. There were already people counting down excitedly. 9, 8, 7, 6. Susan couldn't help but let out a long sigh as he sat on the ground. Just a little bit more. What a pity, Su Air said. God Yi is already very powerful. Can a normal person get second place when he just entered the Carnage leaderboard? Only Suda opened his eyes wide and stared at the leaderboard. 3, 2, 1. As expected, our Cabinet Master Fu is still first. Is this human nature? Suda's pupils shrank involuntarily. The red light flashed for the last time. Why do you seem to see the name at the top change a little? Was it an illusion? Ding dong. At the same time, above everyone, in the sky of the entire Tingguang ruins, a dull mechanical voice sounded. Tingguang ruins world of slaughter announcement. Yi Liangshun is ranked first on the slaughter leaderboard in the 34th round of the Guiyu period with 94,200 points. Yi Liangshun, please come to the slaughter list to get the 34th order of Guiyu as soon as possible. No one could hear what he said next. Everyone in the square felt a buzzing sound in their heads. They could hardly believe their ears. What did they hear? Yap Liangshun was at the top of the slaughter list? How is this possible? In the Thunder Gang, which was already in a mess, Mu Yin activated the floating light jade key. When she saw the announcement on it, she couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. The 34th order of Guiyu? What is 34? A special symbol representing 34? She vaguely felt that she had seen a similar symbol somewhere before. Forget it. Let's not care about this for now. In short, by a hair's breadth, he had finally reached the top of the slaughter list. Chapter 3263. Looking at the members of the Leitang gang kneeling on the ground and crying for their parents, their faces covered in snot and tears, Mayan couldn't help curling her lips. In order to survive, these people were just short of telling her all the good things they had done when they were 3 years old and wearing diapers, just so that they wouldn't be defined as human animals who deserved to be killed for their crimes. If it weren't for the fact that there wasn't enough time, she really would have gone to the jungle to continue killing wild beasts. Great God Yi, you are our savior. Please accept our worship. This Leitang gang is gone. Great God Yi, why don't you occupy it and become king? Let's form a new force and guarantee that we can beat the other forces. No way. Don't tell me you want to create another one on the floating island? The mutated Tingguang ruins had existed for so many years, plus there was a 10 to 1 time blessing. Why hadn't anyone been able to reach the top of the list 12 times in a row after so long? No, there must be a lot of hidden worries. She glanced at the people kneeling down below and said unhurriedly, "Fine, then let's form a force." They weren't just grateful. Even Ma Qian couldn't help but say excitedly, "Miss, what's the name of our force?" Will the Yi family help us? Everyone, several days later, in the floating island of Carefree City. Originally, it was just a simple and crude, casually built city lord's residence. At this time, Wei Mian was standing on a tall building, looking down at the people coming and going. Beside him, the scholar Zhou Ziyan let out a long sigh of relief. Recently, we've only been able to exchange the cloud bones for some supplies by selling them to the nearby Jade Sea City. But if this goes on, we won't be able to hold on sooner or later. The population of Carefree City was still a little too small, and the prosperity of the town needed ordinary people to fill it up. Chapter 3264. Look, more and more unaffiliated cultivators are coming to Liberty City to settle down. Isn't it all for the sake of training in the 6 Stars Pagoda? The chaotic tower was left in the Phoenix Mountain Range. Instead, part of the control of the primordial tower had been assigned to Yin Hao Yin, Ru Yin, Feng Haidang by Yi Chen and Chu Tianyu. Before she went to the dark Parasol Desert, Mu Yin had left the 6 Stars Pagoda in Liberty City and given Wei Mian part of the control. She also released the news that there were top training magical equipment in Liberty City. At first, there were only a few unaffiliated cultivators who decided to check it out since they were passing by. They were reluctant to leave it all. They were unaffiliated cultivators in the first place. It did not matter where they stayed. As for the fact that Liberty City was a new city whose lord was of unknown origins, except for the country, the 3 alliances, and the 8 sects that had been standing for a long time, the other forces were always rising and falling. It was also possible that a random big shot could establish a prosperous town or sect that would stand for decades without collapsing. They were almost worshipping their lady as if she were a goddess. Old Gus swallowed and couldn't help but look at Wei Mian. Boss, should we tell our lady the truth? Maybe she can really help us. Years of hatred, injustice, and expectation almost made it impossible for him to control his expression. Everybody fell silent. The roar immediately attracted everybody's attention. The noise was so noisy that even they could hear it from the top of the city tower. Chapter 3265. Wei Mian frowned. Let's go over and take a look. When they got closer, they found a figure blocking the entrance of the 6 Stars Pagoda. Then, Wei Mian was shocked to find that those who wanted to enter the 6 Stars Pagoda were blocked by a beam of faint blue light. Seeing these people, someone immediately shouted, "What the hell is going on? Didn't they say that as long as we paid enough crystals, we could enter this top-notch magic treasure to cultivate? But now we can't even enter the door. How is this possible?" Tai Tu pushed the crowd aside and shouted in a low, muffled voice, "I'd like to see which shameless guy dares to steal something from Liberty City." The moment he saw that person, Wei Mian was stunned for a moment. Even his breathing quickened. Tai Tu clenched his fists and glared at the teenager in front of him fiercely. "You're just in the mortal cultivation realm. How dare you be so arrogant? Have you grown hair? I think you're tired of living, aren't you?" The dimples on his face were partly visible. "I don't want to behave atrociously, but this 6 Stars Pagoda belongs to my 6th senior sister, but it appeared in your place. Of course, I have to figure it out." The teenager showed a hint of hesitation on his face. "Huh?" Tai Tu was so angry that he almost laughed. "Kid, you're here to make fun of us, aren't you? Get out of the 6 Stars Pagoda. Believe it or not, I'll beat you until you cry for your parents." "How arrogant you are!" Tai Tu immediately puffed up his beard and glared at him fiercely. His fists were clenched so hard that they made cracking sounds. "Then let me see if you're as powerful as you say." The onlookers retreated and looked at the young man with gloating expressions on their faces. And the teenager was obviously only at the peak of the mortal cultivation realm. This kid was dead meat. He shook his head, looking absent-minded and confused. It was as if he didn't want him to be hurt at all. Why could he control the Mrs. 6 Stars Pagoda? Tai Tu cultivated the magical power of the Hard and Fierce series. "Ha ha! How dare you act so arrogantly in Liberty City? Kid, is it too late for you to beg for mercy?" Chapter 3266. The young man didn't speak. Instead, he curled his lips, closed his eyes, and spread his arms. A faint silver light was emitted from his fingertips. In the next moment, the surrounding rocks and trees, as well as the treasures and crystals piled up by the roadside, started to gather around the young man. The crowd was in an uproar. A puppet master. He's actually a puppet master among soul masters, creating puppets out of thin air. Isn't such a godly skill that only the elite elders of those large sects can do? This young man is quite capable. Even Tai, too, looked surprised, and he couldn't help but stop what he was doing. "Kid, you're quite capable, huh?" He smashed the puppet in front of him with a punch. But soon, a dense horde of puppets surged forward. Tai, too, started to panic. After a small puppet bit his left leg, he gritted his teeth, and a bloodthirsty ferocity burst out of his eyes. "Diamond Leopard, come out!" Tai, too, pointed to the sky with one hand, and all the spiritual power in his body exploded. In the next moment, a golden leopard appeared beside him. Wow! Another round of intense discussion broke out. Soul Master. It's another Soul Master, and it's the most powerful summoner among Soul Masters. Look at the spiritual power surrounding that leopard. It's so powerful. It should be an elite-level summon at least, right? I didn't expect such a powerful summoner to exist in a small Liberty city. This young man is quite powerful, but I'm afraid he has no chance of winning against this summon. Roar! It was as if he was trying to prove what everyone said. The diamond leopard roared furiously and pounced at the young man. It opened its bloody mouth, and its sharp claws whistled through the air as it smashed the puppets jumping in the air into pieces. In the blink of an eye, the leopard was in front of the young man. A huge, ferocious beast and a weak young man. The contrast was so stark that everyone could almost imagine the tragic scene of blood splattering 3 feet in the next moment. Some soft-hearted people couldn't help but turn their heads. They couldn't bear to see this handsome young man being torn into pieces. Wei Mian's expression changed drastically, and he stepped forward to stop him. However, in the center of the storm, the young man under the leopard's bloody mouth curled his lips. TSK, who doesn't have a summon beast? In the next moment, a red bead floated out from behind him. A dazzling light bloomed. The fiery red giant bird flew into the sky and spread its wings, burning the sky red. Whoosh! He gently flapped his wings. The majestic leopard was immediately thrown to the ground. It let out a frightened whimper and couldn't get up for a long time. Everyone in front of 6 Stars Pagoda who saw this scene was stunned. The bird in the sky was so beautiful, so dazzling. This was summoned by the young man who looked no more than 18 or 19 years old. A commander-grade summoned beast. Not only is he a puppeteer, he's also a summoner, and he actually summoned a commander divine beast. Oh my god, the entire floating island only had a few commander summoned beasts? Who is this young man? After flipping the King Kong leopard, the fiery bird in the sky let out a long cry. It suddenly transformed into a beam of fiery light and swooped down towards Tai Tu. Stop, brat, you dare to hurt people. Have mercy. This time, even Wei Mian's expression changed, and he hurriedly rushed towards Tai Tu. However, it was too late. Chapter 3267. The Firebird's speed was too fast, and its attack power was too strong. They couldn't catch up at all. It was a loud bang. Tai Tu's tower-like body was sent flying and slammed heavily into the wall. The eyes of Butcher and the rest instantly turned red. How dare you? I will kill you to avenge Tai Tu. The long saber was unsheathed, and the pressure of a peak mysterious life stage suddenly spread out. Butcher's eyes were bloodshot as he slashed at the young man. Ding! However, before he could raise his knife, the Butcher staggered from the blow. The saber in his hand fell to the ground. Who is it? Who is bold enough to meddle in the business of Liberty City? Old Goo roared angrily and also took out his magic treasure. However, in the next moment, a familiar and sweet-sounding female voice rang out in everyone's ears. It's me. What do you want? Wei Mian, the Butcher, the Scholar, and even Tai Tu, who had just climbed to his feet in a sorry state, stiffened. The expression on his face instantly turned into one of ecstasy. Indeed, very soon, a white figure descended from the sky and slowly landed in front of the Six Stars Pagoda. It was June Mayan. The real master of Liberty City had returned. Tai Tu's eyes reddened as he shouted in a hoarse voice, "Miss, this brat." His complaint was not yet finished. The boy who had just beaten him up pounces over and hugs Mayan. "Six senior sister. It was really Six senior sister. I missed you so much." Muyan was also dumbfounded, although he thought he saw Luo Yu's figure from afar. But at this moment his heart was finally at ease. It was Luo Yu. It really was Luo Yu. Shouldn't he be in the cultivation world? Why would he come to the floating island? After staring blankly for a moment, Muyan's face suddenly blooms with a brilliant smile. She hugged Luo Yu back, her usually steady voice trembling with excitement. "Xiao Qi, why are you here?" Everyone from Liberty City, Tai Tu, whose face was swollen and bruised, was especially dumbfounded. Wait a minute. He was wild with joy when he saw the young miss, and was waiting for the young miss to uphold justice for them. But how did it turn into the scene of the young miss, and this brat recognizing their kin? Who was this kid who could summon 8 Commander Divine Beast? Inside the room, a refreshing and soothing incense was lit. Snacks such as melons, fruits, and pastries filled the table. As Luo Yu wolfed down her food, she didn't forget to complain to Mu Yin, Six senior sister, "You don't know how miserable I was. The moment I opened my eyes, I was surrounded by a group of ferocious beasts. As far as the eye could see, it was a dense forest. I walked in there for 3 days and 3 nights, and when I finally got out, I walked into a black village. I was almost drugged and sold as a slave." The youth rambled on, enunciating each word clearly, but his mouth never stopped eating. Mu Yin looks at his childish appearance in amusement. "You said that 3rd senior brother sent you to the floating island?" Luo Yu nodded and was about to eat another piece of cake. A small hand reached out and stopped his movements. Xiao Bao kept a straight face and said in a serious tone, "7th martial uncle, eating too many snacks is bad for your stomach. You can't eat too much. The food will be ready soon. What if we can't eat in a while?" Luo Yu felt that she was so hungry that she could eat a cow. But this was the advice of such a lovely martial nephew who had not seen each other for a long time. Luo Yu decisively put down the cake in her hand, hugged Xiao Bao, and kissed him on his white and tender little face. Okay. As long as it's our Xiao Bao, martial uncle will listen." Chapter 3268. Xiao Bao blushed and pushed him away, throwing himself into Mu Yan's arms. After a long time, he turned his head and said seriously, Even men are not allowed to touch each other. 7th uncle, you can't kiss Xiao Bao anymore. Xiao Bao is different from 5th uncle and Uncle Ouyang." Ha ha ha. Luo Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. How could their families Xiao Bao be so cute? He even knew the relationship between 5th brother and Ouyang Qing. Even Mu Yin couldn't help but tease the baby in her arms. She lowered her head and kissed him on the cheek. "Will Nyang Qin kiss me?" Xiao Bao's little face became redder. The corners of his lips curled up, and after a while, he said in a low voice, "Yes." After teasing Xiao Bao, only then did Luo Yu briefly describe what had happened in the past few months. It turned out that after Mu Yin left, the remaining 6 people of the Xiao Yao sect swore to reach the tribulation stage within 3 months and fly to the floating island. However, how could it be easy to break through from the leaving body stage to the tribulation stage within 3 months? Otherwise, how could so many cultivators be stuck at this bottleneck for decades? Even if the talents of the Xiao Yao sect were extraordinary, even if they practiced hard day and night, they were still stuck at the peak of the leaving body stage, unable to advance. Luo Yu held her chin and said, "At that time, we were really anxious. Although we knew that it was normal to be stuck at the peak of the leaving body stage for a few years, we had 6 sisters by our side, all kinds of top elixirs and musician auxiliary skills to help us advance quickly. We really couldn't accept this gap for a while." Mu Yan's strength was far from her personal strength, but as long as the people around her gathered, Because of her influence, their strength would rapidly improve. The Xiao 6 were like this. The Nether Flame Army was like this. Even the Liang Chen Army and the Qing Cheng Army, which were not close to Mu Yin, were more or less helpful. Without Mu Yin, the Xiao 6 were still the most talented people with the highest potential. But potential is only potential. Without Mu Yan's Shun musician skills to stimulate them, without Mu Yan's Shun musician skills, it would take a long time for this potential to really play a role and help them become powerful. When we think about how many years it will be before we can see Six Senior Sister again, and that by then, we will definitely be left far behind by you. We will no longer be able to fight side by side with you, and we will instead become your burden. We feel extremely depressed. Mu Yin stretched out her hand and slapped him heavily on the head. Don't talk nonsense. The Xiao 7 sons will advance and retreat together. How could you all be a burden? Furthermore, I know your talent and hard work better than anyone else. I'm able to go further and faster than all of you. Not because I'm stronger than all of you, but because I've had a fortuitous encounter. In Bai Xie's words, her life started from the moment she received the inheritance of the Shun musicians. Are the disciples of the Xiao school really not as talented as her? That's not it. It's just that they don't have the heaven-defying golden finger like the Shun musicians. But was it really a good thing to have such a cheat? How glorious was the Kamikaze Gate in the past? Weren't they exterminated in the end? Luo Yu giggled and said, in Bai Xie's words, our Xiao sect is a concentration camp for geniuses, but geniuses are also divided into different levels. If we're the heavens' favorites that only appear once in 100 years, then, Six Senior Sister, you are the evildoer that only appears once in 1,000 years. But fortunately, besides Six Senior Sister, our Xiao sect still has another evildoer. Chapter 32:69. Oh no, there should be 3, including Junior Martial Uncle. Hee. Mu Yin raises her eyebrows. What did third brother do? Luo Yu blinks. I don't know what third brother did. He just drew a very strange painting, then burned the painting and buried the ashes into the ground in a circle. Then he let us enter the circle. Then I felt that I had entered a small world. This small world is a bit similar to the one where instructor Mo trained us. We can only fight and kill in it, or we will suffer the pain and fear of death, and then the cycle starts again. I don't know how long I stayed in it, but I was tortured to the point of collapse. By the time I came to my senses, I had already broken through to the tribulation stage. Then, the small world disappeared, and a transmission array appeared under my feet. When I opened my eyes, I was already on the floating island. Mu Yin says thoughtfully, so, the promotion time of the 7 of you, including the location of the final transmission to the floating island, may be different. Fortunately, Six Sister is smart. You actually named the city Liberty City. When I heard it, I guessed it had something to do with you, Six Sister. When I saw the 6 Stars Pagoda, I was even more sure. But before entering the small world, Big Brother repeatedly exhorted him to be careful and prudent on the floating island. His name must not be exposed. Moreover, he couldn't show the divine beast bays in front of others. That's why he accidentally fought with Tai Tu and the others. Luo Yu looks at Mu Yin with admiration and amazement. Six Sister, you've only been on the floating island for a few months, right? How on earth did you gather so many cultivators and troops, and even build Liberty City? Mu Yin smiles and briefly tells her what happened in the gravel hill. Hearing this, Luo Yu was stunned. He thought he was unlucky enough to fall into the deep mountains and old forests. He didn't expect that Sixth Sister would enter such a terrible place as the gravel hill. If it were someone else, no matter how strong he was, he would probably be trapped there for the rest of his life. Just then, the door is pushed open. A man in white walks into the room with a tray in his hand. The moment Xiao Bao saw this person, he immediately straightened his back, and his whole body and mind entered a state of preparation for battle. When Luo Yu raised her head, she saw a pair of icy blue eyes that were almost the same as Xiao Bao's. She almost blurted out, "Teacher Mo." That was close, he thought. The person in front of him only has a pair of eyes similar to Di Mingju and Xiao Bao. Her other facial features and face shape leaned towards feminine beauty and even had a bit of evil charm. Who was this person? Li Weiran placed the fragrant dishes on the dining table and said gently, Mu Yin, there hasn't been much to eat in Kangwu City these few days. You must be starving, right? Mu Yin looked at him like he was an idiot. Li Weiran, did you hit your head somewhere? Or did you come up with some new poison to put in this food? Li Weiran frowned and said helplessly, Mu Yin, how many times do you want me to say it before you believe me? I just want to protect you. From now on, as long as I'm by your side, I won't let you suffer any harm. When he said the last sentence, the man in front of him leaned forward slightly. For the first time, Mu Yan's figure was reflected in those bottomless, icy blue eyes. He used the same cynical tone as before, but the fingers of the hand that was pressed on the edge of the table tightened, and the veins on the back of his hand slightly bulged. Chapter 3270. Mu Yin rolled her eyes and said unhappily, First, I won't believe you no matter how many times you say it. Second, there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. We're not related, so why did you suddenly go from finding trouble with me to protecting me? Don't tell me you want to pursue me again. I'm sorry, but my fiancé is 100 times better than you. I really don't like a pretty boy like you. Xiao Bao nodded heavily. Li Weiran stared at her for a long time. Finally, he lowered his long lashes, covering all the emotions and light in his eyes. After a while, the atmosphere in the room made Mu Yin and Luo Yu feel like they were sitting on pins and needles. Only then did Li Weiran slowly take out the red silk and cover his eyes again. When that pair of icy blue eyes was covered, Li Weiran's entire temperament seemed to change. He said casually, Mu Yin, you're too sharp. All right, I'll tell you the truth. I want the core of Tianguang ruins, an item from Floating Light Island. If you can bring it to me, we'll call it, even for me, saving this little fellow. How about that? Mu Yin was startled. How did you know I can enter Floating Light Island? Li Weiran's gaze swept over Mu Yin, and he smiled lightly. From the first time I saw you, I could feel the aura of the floating light jade key on you. It's just that this thing has already fused with your soul, so it's useless even if I snatch it. Moreover, my situation is special. I didn't expect that I wouldn't even be able to enter Tianguang ruins. I can only rely on you now if I want this treasure. Mu Yin frowned. So this is the reason why you stared at me from the beginning at the rocky hill. Li Weiran curled his thin lips. Of course. What other reason did Mu Yin think it would be? Hearing this, Mu Yin didn't get angry. Instead, she let out a long sigh. As long as he had a request, what she was most afraid of was not knowing his motive. It didn't matter if it was real or fake. Anyway, it was good enough that she could repay him for saving Xiao Bao. She pondered for a moment and asked, Tell me what you want first. If I tell you, will Mu Yin give it to me immediately? Li Weiran said with a faint smile. If I'm not wrong, you can't go to Floating Light Island right now, right? Mu Yin, I'll tell you what I want the day you go to Floating Light Island. Before that, I can only stay by your side. After that, he doesn't wait for Mind's response and has already left the room. After closing the door, Luo Yu and Mu Yin look at each other. Thinking of what Mu Yin had said about Li Weiran's actions, Luo Yu said worriedly, Is it really all right to have such a dangerous person by your side? Mu Yin, forget it. No matter what, he still saved Xiao Bao. Since he has a favor to ask of me, he shouldn't harm us for the time being. Luo Yu thought about it and agreed. She immediately put aside her worries and happily began to eat. Yeah, this Li Weiran has bad intentions, but the food he cooks is really delicious. He is not inferior to fifth senior brother at all. Mu Yin felt the same way and said with some resentment, Otherwise, why do you think I can't resist the temptation even though I know he's an enemy? In the space of the Tian Mo Qin, Qi Huang stomped his feet in anger. Jun Mayan, Lan Liu, you two idiots. This brat obviously harbors ill intentions. Can't you see it? Mu Yin asked curiously, What intentions? And when did he ever have good intentions? Chapter 3271. Qi Huang blushes, grits her teeth, and doesn't speak. Idiot woman, can't you see the way he looks at you? It's not like he's looking at someone he can use. Instead, it's filled with aggression. Is he looking at his favorite prey? Outside the city lord's residence, the youth with red silk over his eyes raises his head, watching the bright moon in the sky as if it's dyed with blood. His thin lips gently hooks up, his smile evil and charming. June Mayan, I've never desired someone so much in my life, especially when this person was snatched from Di Mingju's hands. Suddenly, there's a slight heat at his waist. Li Weiran frowns, and someone impatiently pulls out a small mirror. At this time, the seemingly ordinary copper mirror is emitting a faint light, and a few bright red characters appear on the mirror surface. Urgent matter. Return quickly, Yu Yanran. Li Weiran curls his lips, puts the copper mirror back into his bosom, and leaves with a smile. A few days ago, Linglong Island, Xiaoxin Continent. Reporting to Miss, the herb for the magnificent quicksand have been found. Hearing the voice coming from outside the house, Yu Yanran's expression suddenly shakes. Her eyes burst with a light of excitement and expectation. However, it's only for a moment, and it's replaced by unwillingness and grievance. Seeing Huang Shouchuan walk in and look at her worriedly, she bites her lips and says, "That herb, who is it?" Don't worry, Mississippi. Although there are very few herb men left from ancient times, they're not completely non-existent. Huang Shouchuan says confidently, and because of some special reasons, those herb men are either stranded in the Xiaoxin continent or they're disciples of small, unranked sects in the Xiaoxin continent. They're said to be the son of heaven's will, but in fact, they rely on absorbing the luck of the people around them. Thus, the sects therein generally won't be too prosperous, and on the contrary, they'll face endless calamities. Because of these factors, this subordinate quickly found a herb man in a third-rate sect called Thunderlight Sect. This herb man is much purer than the one Lung Yuexia and the others found. As a herb, it will certainly make the effect of the magnificent quicksand near perfection. This subordinate has already ordered the people in the elixir room to start refining. Yu Yanran shows unbearable expression. To kill an innocent person for the sake of the magnificent quicksand, I feel a little uneasy. Huang Shouchuan sneered. To be able to become the medicinal catalyst for Miss to consume the medicinal pill is a blessing that he has cultivated for several lifetimes. He's just a disciple of a small sect. If he dies, then so be it. What's there to feel pity about? His gaze towards Yu Yanran was filled with pity and hidden adoration. Miss, it is precisely because you are too kind that you are bullied time and time again. Even a mere vixen from the lower world can act so arrogantly in front of you. Only then did Yu Yanran reveal a relieved smile. Then I'll have to trouble big brother Huang to watch over the refinement of the magnificent quicksand for me. As long as I change into June Mayan's appearance, perhaps Di June would be willing to look at me? Huang Shouchuan felt a pain in his heart and was about to speak. Suddenly, a figure stumbled into the hall from outside. Huang Shouchuan glared at him unhappily. Why are you so flustered? You don't have the slightest sense of propriety in front of Miss. Island Master, Deputy Island Master have returned. Senior Yu, who went to Yanwu Continent to investigate, has returned. He suffered some injuries when passing through the spatial barrier passage, so he couldn't personally come over to greet the Island Master. He asked me to tell the Island Master that he had made an important discovery in Yanwu Continent. Yu Yanran abruptly stood up. Yu Jing has returned? Really? Where is he now? Quickly take me to find him. Chapter 3272. The damage caused by being torn apart by the space barrier is clearly very serious. Even though Yu Jing has already taken a healing elixir, his complexion is still deathly pale at this time, blood continuously spilling from the corners of his mouth. Seeing Yu Yanran, Yu Jing hurriedly gets up. Greetings, miss. Yu Dage, quickly lie down and don't move. You suffered such a serious injury because of Yanran. Yu Jing is overwhelmed by the favor and says emotionally, this subordinate is one of the 12 guards of Linglong. For Miss, I should go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. Huang Shouchuan impatiently says, Yu Jing, what did you find out in the Yinwu continent? To have Miss personally come to see you in such a hurry? Yu Jing restrains his expression, looking at Yu Yanran, and solemnly says, Miss, the Junmayan that you asked this subordinate to investigate, does she have a son? Yu Yanran's expression darkens, biting her lip as she nods. Why are you asking this? Huang Shouchuan angrily says, Miss has already seen that little bastard. The Emperor of the Polar Domain personally taught him, and even the people of the Polar Domain recognized him as their master. I don't know what method that vixen used to actually make the Emperor allow such a mortal to give birth to his own bloodline. No, that's not right. Yu Jing excitedly straightens up, shouting, That child's father is not the Emperor. What did you say? Yu Yanran and Huang Shouchuan simultaneously turn pale with fright. Say it again. Cough, cough, cough. Yu Jing clutches his chest and coughs several times. But this time, Yu Yanran doesn't softly comfort or express her concern. Her face is full of excitement and anxiety. Even her voice rises a few times. Yu Dage, quickly say it. What did you investigate in the Yinwu continent? Cough, cough. That Junmayan's reputation in the Yinwu continent is not small, but very few people know the identity of the child by her side. It seems that from the time he appeared several years ago, this child has already been by her side, calling her Nyanqin. Because that Junmayan is too young, many people even thought that the child was adopted by her. This subordinate also investigated in many ways, and finally found some information in the home of Junmayan's adoptive father. It turns out that a few years ago, Junmayan was tainted by drugs. In the end, she got pregnant out of wedlock and gave birth to a little bastard. That child's father is not an emperor monarch at all. In fact, no one even knows who that child's father is. Yu Yanran clenched her fists tightly. Months of resentment, grievance, jealousy, and bitterness had all turned into a burning excitement at this moment. Quick, tell me exactly what you found. Yu Jing's breathing was hurried, his entire body in pain like it was on fire. But seeing Yu Yanran's anxious expression, he forced himself to be alert and began to report everything he had found out. 15 minutes later, Huang Shouchuan says in disbelief, You're saying that Di Jun already knew that Mayan's child was an illegitimate child with an unknown father? She doesn't even care that Mayan has already been defiled by another man? How is this possible? Panting heavily, Yu Jing said, Absolutely true. According to this subordinate's investigation, when Di Mingju and Junmayan first met, the child was already 4 years old. Before this, there was no news about Di Jun in the entire Yinwu continent. That's also true. Huang Shouchuan suddenly reacted. That little bastard is at least 5 or 6 years old. But if I remember correctly, 10 years ago, Di Jun was seriously injured because of a tribal riot at the border of the Polar Domain. After that, he went into seclusion in the Polar Domain's forbidden area for a very long time, only coming out again 5 years ago. Chapter 3273. Yu Yanran murmured, So, that child is not of the Emperor's bloodline? Instead, it was Junmayan and some unknown wild man, and the Celestial Emperor already knew about this? But why? Her eyes were suddenly filled with tears, and she clenched her fists tightly. Why did the Emperor turn a blind eye to me, who had waited for him for 1,000 years? Yet he was still clinging to a broken shoe. Why? Why? Yu Jing looked at Yu Yanran's sorrowful appearance and swallowed the words he was about to say. Di Jun doesn't just dislike this Junmayan. Even now, there are people who still take delight in talking about what he did for this Shan musician remnant in the Yinwu continent. They were called the Underworld Flame Emperor, and there were even people who wrote their love story into a folktale and sang it everywhere. Huang Shouchuan's heart ached as he supported the tottering Yu Yanran and said gently, Miss, don't cry. Wasn't that a good thing? Even if Di Jun really accepts that Junmayan is a broken flower and a withered willow, and is even willing to treat that little bastard as his own son, does his heart really not have a thorn in it? Yu Yanran raised her teary eyes and looked at Huang Shouchuan, her eyes filled with hope. Huang Shouchuan continued. Miss, I am sure that this is good news. Perhaps, miss, you don't even need to use the magnificent quicksand to make the emperor dislike Mayan and change his mind towards you. What do you mean? Huang Shouchuan reveals a strange smile. Do you think that Di Jun has shown such leniency? Has he ever thought about who the man who defiled Mayan was? Who is the father of that little bastard? That's the high and mighty polar domain sovereign lord. What kind of woman couldn't he get in this world? What kind of treasure wasn't easily obtainable? Would he really be willing to let his things be tarnished by others? Yu Yanran. But the current emperor clearly has no ill feelings towards that vixen and still dotes on her. Ah, that's because the man who once possessed Jun Mayan didn't appear. The imperial emperor could still ignore this matter and avoid it. But what if that little bastard's biological father appears in front of Mayan? Can Di Jun still treat Mayan well as before? Once he thought about how his woman had been defiled by someone else, and that even his child was someone else's flesh and blood, would he really not feel disgusted? Yu Yanran's eyes lit up bit by bit. Huang Shouchuan continued, and in a fit of rage, the emperor might want to kill that man. But would Jun Mayan allow it? After all, he was her son's biological father. At that time, if Di Jun doesn't dislike Jun Mayan, then Jun Mayan will have a grudge against Di Jun. Can the two of them really return to how they were before? Every word that Huang Shouchuan said seemed to be knocking into Yu Yanran's heart. She was so excited that her body couldn't help but tremble, and she kept pacing around the room. However, she suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but frown. But, big brother, you also said that no one knows who the father of that little bastard is. Where are we going to find that man? Huang Shouchuan curled his lips and gently drew an arc on his eyes with his finger. Miss, you've also seen that little bastard. Don't you think that his eyes look like a person? The first image that appears in Yu Yanran's mind is Di Ming Ju holding that little boy. Two pairs of ice blue eyes are almost exactly the same. Even their expressions and temperament are inexplicably similar. Chapter 3274. No. Yu Yanran repeatedly shakes her head. During that time, Di Jun never left the Xiuxin continent. He can't be the little bastard's father. Then who else would have eyes similar to the little bastard's? Suddenly, Yu Yanran's expression turned sluggish. Her lips slightly open, and she spits out 3 words, Li Weiran. Li Weiran. Yes, it's Li Weiran who has the same pair of icy blue eyes. 10 years ago, Yu Yanran accidentally picked up Li Weiran from the battlefield. At that time, his skin was festering and the stench was unbearable. He couldn't even crawl and could only eat corpses to survive. At first, Yu Yanran was kind enough to save him because of those icy blue eyes that are similar to Di Mingju's. It's just that many years later, Li Weiran displayed his ability. It made Yu Yanran more and more unable to leave him, needing to use him. And he always used the red silk to cover his eyes. So much so that Yu Yanran gradually forgot that he had such a unique pair of blue eyes. Huang Shouchuan nods. Didn't Mayan not find the child's father? We could just give her one. And in this world, there's no better candidate than Li Weiran. Apart from the similar eyes, Li Weiran has been following Mayan all this time, never leaving her side. It's not impossible to say that there's a personal relationship between the two. If it's revealed that Li Weiran is Xiaobao's biological father, do you think Di Jun will still believe in that woman's innocence? Huang Shouchuan closes his eyes at the end, and the corner of his mouth curls up in a cold arc. Of course, Li Weiran will have to bear Di Jun's thunderous fury and eventually die in his hands. Serve him right, and he has nothing to do with others. Yu Yanran's breathing becomes slightly hurried, and she can't help but look in the direction of Huaqing Palace. But will Weiran agree? Ah, his life was saved by you, and he's been obedient to you all these years. Maybe he's already deeply in love with you. As long as it's your order, he will certainly listen. Yu Yanran glares at Huang Shouchuan. Brother Huang, don't talk nonsense. I only treat Weiran as my younger brother. However, your method is indeed feasible. She takes a deep breath and finally grits her teeth. I'll immediately teleport and have Weiran come back. It didn't matter if he used magnificent quicksand or not. She hopes that the surviving Shun musician will be utterly disgraced and die without a burial place, so that he will never be able to seduce the emperor again. Yinwu Continent, a remote valley at the end of the fog forest. A tall figure slowly appeared at the entrance of the valley. He looked into the pitch-black depths of the valley with a profound gaze and let out a long breath. This person was defeating armies. Because of the closure of the spatial barrier, he was forced to stay in the Xiaoxian continent for 3 months. Until now, when the passage opens again, they can finally come to the Yinwu continent. Even in the Xiaoxian continent, defeating armies' cultivation could be considered top-notch. His temperament is eccentric and cold. Apart from his loyalty to Di Mingju, he has no desire for anything else. He is fearless. But at this moment, when he looked at this valley that did not even have the slightest bit of spiritual power, his eyes revealed a bit of fear. Was he really going to return to this place? This place that even Jun Shang was powerless to do anything about, and was almost consigned to eternal damnation? If I'm trapped inside and can't send a message to Jun Shang, defeating armies clenches his teeth and takes out a small bamboo tube from his bosom. He scoops up the soil under his feet and buries it inside. Soon after, he flies into the valley without hesitation. Chapter 3275. Are you saying that Liberty City is out of crystals? Listening to Wei Mian's report, Mu Yin can't help but frown with a headache. What did it mean to say that if you don't manage the household, you don't know the price of rice and firewood? She only knew about it when she was raising the Netherflame army. Now, he no longer needed to maintain the Netherflame army, and he had created a Liberty City for her. Compared to raising a city and a large army, raising a Netherflame army paled in comparison. Mu Yin really has a headache this time. She didn't know how to do business. The sky-floating island's Tianguang ruins wasn't like the cultivation continents, which was a trading ground. As long as she sells talismans and pills in this father's #1 shop, she will be able to earn a large sum of money. At this moment, Qi Huang was still making a ruckus beside her ear. Liberty City and the broken army aside, the most important thing right now is to build your natal sword. Even if you have crystal stones, don't waste them. Use them all to buy refining materials. If you run into that pretty boy Luo Yunxiao next time, and your natal sword is still this shabby, I won't let you off. Mu Yin couldn't wait to throw a shoe at this brat's face. This guy casually said, "Make a natal sword." Moreover, he wanted 7 in one go. Do you know how terrifying the expenses are? Most of the rare materials in 7 Brilliance's refining list could not be purchased at all. He could only search for it in the Massacre Skylight ruins. As for the rest of the trash materials in Qi Huang's mouth, they were sold at an extremely high price on the floating islands market. Mu Yin finally knows why Qi Huang never let her forge a natal sword when she was in the Xiaoxian continent. Not to mention the cloud bone, the most important core material. Not a single one of the common materials on the list could be found in the cultivation world. Moreover, as a descendant of the Shun musician, it can be said that she is proficient in almost all kinds of magical powers. Combat, support, medical treatment, talismans, planting, all of them are included in the inheritance of the Shun musician. But he could only forge weapons. The inherited memories had clearly mentioned this. However, the skill did not show any signs of being unlocked. Even Qi Huang says that he has never seen any refining-related skills among the Shun musician skills. Even Bailey Luin, the founder of the Kamikaze Gate, was the same. Therefore, Mu Yin wants to forge a natal sword. Not only did he have to prepare a large amount of rare materials, he also needed to find the best blacksmith on this floating island. And this also meant that he would have to spend a lot of crystals on the tournament. Thinking of this, Mine has a big headache. She looked at Zhou Zixuan and Ruan Yang. Do you have any suggestions? Zhou Zixuan bowed and said, if we want our Liberty City to prosper, we first need a sufficient flow of people. Although our 6 Stars Pagoda has attracted a lot of cultivators, most of them are rogue cultivators who have nothing to do with them and don't have high cultivation. Just them and the people who came out of the rubble can't support town. Mu Yin pondered for a moment, Then she took out a stack of talismans from the space. First, find a nearby town and sell these talismans to help with the emergency. Zhou Zixuan takes the thick stack of talismans from Mu Yan's hand, his face revealing an expression of wanting to say something but hesitating. In the end, it was still Rei Nyang who cautiously said, "Miss, the spirit-mending talisman. These elementary, universal talismans can't be sold for a good price on the floating island. Even a Tier 8 talisman is only worth 1 crystal stone." Mu Yan looks at them strangely. "Who told you that these are elementary, universal talismans?" The so-called primary universal talisman was a saying on the floating island. It was those drawing methods that could be found everywhere, and they were simple talismans. Chapter 3276. Generally, it includes replenishing spirit talismans, speed talismans, 5 elements attack talismans, and so on. But because they're simple to draw and not very powerful, the price is very cheap. As for those high-level special talismans, their drawing methods are all in the hands of one of the 8 major sects, the infamily of Spirit Gathering City. Compared to the low price of primary talismans, the price of the talismans sold by the infamily is several times higher. Those rare talismans are also inflated to sky-high prices in all the markets. Hearing Mu Yan's words, Zhou Zixuan subconsciously looks down. This, what are these? A scream startles even Wei Mian and Butcher outside the door. Invisibility talisman, wind talisman, thunder talisman, diamond defense talisman. Aren't these talismans the infamily secret arts? Miss, you can draw them too. Ma Quishan, who follows in, sees Zhou Zixuan's fuss and can't help but show a proud expression. Although he is only a small team leader and can't compare to the strength of these generals. But in terms of the Miss's ability, these people are far behind him. How can a Miss only draw these talismans? She can also refine pills. His father has been trapped in Tingguang ruins for many years, and his body has long since withered and decayed. Although his father's confidant stole him out and took good care of him, he can no longer restore his peak strength. Unexpectedly, the Miss let his father take a pill, and the festering flesh began to heal. Those withered meridians also regained their vitality. Ma Quishan's heart itches, and he can't help but take a talisman from Zhou Zixuan's hand, saying excitedly, "The effect of the talismans drawn by Miss is much better than the ones sold by the infamily. Look at this diamond defense talisman. I only need to use this little spiritual power to make a protective cover that even a profound life realm cultivator can't easily break. And this wind talisman, let me tell you, the speed is comparable to," as he says this, he takes out a second talisman. Tai Tu suddenly comes to his senses and fiercely slaps his hand. "Get lost. These talismans are all used to sell for money. How can you waste them? Haha, such a big stack of talismans. We can exchange them for a lot of crystal stones, and our military training expenses can last for a while." Wei Mian looks at Mu Yan with awe and sincerely praises, "In this world, is there anything that the Miss can't do?" Mu Yan sighed. "Of course there is. I'm in urgent need of a powerful armament refiner, and the things on this list." She threw out a piece of paper. "When you go to Lin City to buy things, also keep an eye out for me. If there's anything on this list, buy it for me." Zhou Zixuan took a look at the list and couldn't help but gasp. These things cost more money than their military expenses. He looks at Mayan with a bitter face. Just as he's about to speak, there's a sudden commotion outside the house. "City Lord, General Wei, bad news. The disciples of the Dark Palace of the Jade Sea City have blocked the entrance of Liberty City, demanding that we hand over the 6 Stars Tower, or they will demolish our entire city." Mu Yan, what kind of toy is this mysterious Een Palace? The profound Een Palace was naturally not a plaything. Instead, it was the 4th great power of Jade Sea City. They specialize in accepting talented puppeteers. In a Mystic Een Palace, almost every elite disciple can control tens or even hundreds of puppets in battle. So the Mystic Een Palace is also known as an army that isn't an army. Chapter 3277. It means that they can use their puppeteer skills to command an army of tens of thousands of puppets while still maintaining their tyrannical strength. If the disciples of the Dark Moon Palace insist on picking on Liberty City, we will be in big trouble. Zhou Zixuan frowned and said in annoyance, "Why would the Dark Moon Palace target Liberty City?" Liberty City had just been established, and there were many things to be done. The army had not been trained yet. They did not have the strength to fight a real major force at all, or they would certainly suffer heavy losses. It's also because of the Six Stars Tower. The person reporting carefully said, "These few days, there is a disciple of the Dark Moon Palace who has been spending crystal stones to cultivate in the Six Stars Pagoda. At a critical moment, the crystal stones are not enough, so he wants to continue cultivating on credit." Zhou Zixuan asked, "Did you turn him down?" No, we did not. But the people who had been cut in line by him a few times were not happy and started a fight with the disciple of the Dark Moon Palace. We had no choice but to step in and take care of it, because we saw that it was getting out of hand. However, the disciple of the Dark Moon Palace missed the epiphany and reached the bottleneck again, unable to make a breakthrough. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. Also, someone was fanning the flames. Eventually, things got out of hand. Zhou Zixuan heaved a long sigh. Then, he looked at Mu Yin in shame. "Miss, it was my incompetence that caused such a disaster." Mu Yin scratched her chin and said casually, "What is the fourth major force in the Blue Wave City? Is the Dark Moon Palace very rich?" Zhou Zixuan, huh? Probably. He was truly confused. Why did Miss ask if the Dark Moon Palace was rich? In the next moment, they saw their new master, the leader of Liberty City, the girl who was as beautiful as a goddess, slowly curl her lips into a brilliant smile. "It's good that you're rich. If you were a bunch of paupers, wouldn't your efforts be for naught?" Zhou. While they were talking, they had reached the city gate. At this moment, the city wall of Liberty City was no longer short and shabby. Huge blue stones were stacked on top of each other, forming a tall ring-shaped barrier. On the city wall, there was a sentry post every 10 steps. It was heavily guarded. Outside the city wall, deep trenches had been dug, and crystals had been buried below to establish a defense array to protect the entire city. At this moment, in front of the open bronze gate, a group of indignant youths were controlling the puppets beside them in an attempt to break through the defensive formation. The array that Mayan has arranged is, of course, extremely exquisite. However, such a large-scale formation also had a very big flaw. That was burning crystal stones. Burning crystal stones like crazy. Liberty City, on the other hand, was extremely poor. Therefore, the group of people from the Darkeen Palace controlled the puppets to attack for a while. The lights surrounding the entire city flickered for a moment before finally disappearing. Haha, I was wondering how powerful this Liberty City was. So it's nothing more than this. Even the great city protecting array is so fragile. It can't even withstand a single blow. In my opinion, the senior martial brothers of the Mysticine Palace are still the best. With so many puppets attacking at the same time, their momentum shook the heavens. So what if it was a powerful formation? Wasn't it breached in the blink of an eye? The people of the Darkeen Palace all wore blue and white Taoist robes. They all looked to be young male cultivators. At this moment, each and every one of them raised their chins with arrogant expressions. Beside them, there were many people wearing the uniforms of other sects who were constantly cheering and flattering them. Those are people from the 10,000 Swords Manor. Chapter 3278. Zhou Zixuan saw Mu Yan's curious eyes looking at this group of people. He curled his lips in disdain. They're a group of despicable people who seek nothing but profit and cling to the Darkeen Palace to survive. They are best at sowing dissension in front of the big forces, luring them to destroy the rising small sects and families so that they can profit from it. Who knows, they might have been the ones who stirred up trouble. Mu Yan looked at the shifty-eyed people and nodded in satisfaction. They seek nothing but profit. I suppose they are richer? Zhou Zixuan, sensing Mu Yan's approach. The people of Liberty City, who were ready to fight, turned around and hurriedly bowed and knelt down. "Greetings, City Lord." After Mu Yin waved her hand to let them stand up, the scene immediately became noisy. "City Lord is here. So City Lord has been in the city these days. I thought City Lord didn't come back after going to the dark Parasol Desert. Haha. With City Lord here, there's nothing to be afraid of. My stall can't be left unattended. I'm going back first." Everyone's eyes were filled with worship and awe. The fear and nervousness he felt just now disappeared without a trace the moment he saw this young girl. Everyone in the city began to return to their positions and perform their duties. It was as if they believed from the bottom of their hearts that as long as their city lord was here, all the dangers could be averted. The leader of the Darkeen Palace was a young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes. He looked no more than 27 or 28 years old. He had a long sword on his waist, and his posture was tall and straight. He was quarreling with the people of Liberty City angrily. Hearing them call him City Lord, he couldn't help but look over with a cold smile. "You are Liberty City's." His voice stopped abruptly. His eyes fell on Mu Yin, and he was completely dumbfounded. Behind Mu Yin, Ma Quishan moved 2 armchairs for her and Wei Mian like he knew them very well. He placed them one in front of the other in the back. "Miss General Wei, please take a seat." Mu Yin sat down casually. Then, she looked at the young man who spoke just now. "Yes, I'm the City Lord of Liberty City. If you have any opinions about our city, you can tell me." "I, 6 Stars Pagoda." "No, I'm also cultivating." The young man's face was so red that it could drip water. He stammered for a long time and couldn't even say a complete sentence. His gaze roamed around, not daring to look at Mu Yin at all. The other people from Mysticine Palace were also young male cultivators with thin skin. His performance was not much better than the leaders. Mu Yin waited for a long time, only to find that they could not even utter a complete sentence. Instead, she was amused by them. "You have come to my Liberty City aggressively. Don't you want an explanation?" "What? Now you don't want it." It was your Liberty City that was unfair and biased towards the cultivators in your city. Can't we talk about it?" Looking at the people of the Dark Een Palace being captivated by Mayan one by one, they couldn't even say a proper sentence. The people of the 10,000 Swords Manor grew anxious. They had made up their mind to take advantage of the situation when the Mystic Moon Palace crushed Liberty City and reaped the benefits. If the two sides did not fight, how could they fish in troubled waters? "We've had enough of your Liberty City over the past few days. We clearly paid so many spar, but we have to line up behind those lowly commoners, unable to use the 6 Stars Pagoda. It's fine that we can't use it, but you even want to hinder Senior Brother Beitan's cultivation. Now that his breakthrough and advancement have been delayed, can you afford it?" Chapter 32:79. The shouts brought the people of the Dark Palace back to their senses. The young man with thick eyebrows, who was their leader, coughed lightly. He straightened his body and cupped his hands at Mu Yin. "I am Beitang, a disciple of the leader of the Dark Palace. May I know who you are? But this is a matter between the Dark Palace and Liberty City. It has nothing to do with you. Let's invite the real master of Liberty City to come out and discuss it." Mu Yin slightly tilted her body, her posture lazy. She said with a faint smile, "I am the master of Liberty City. Believe it or not, get lost." "What an arrogant girl." A middle-aged man with a pointy mouth from the 10,000 Swords village sneered, "I wonder if your bones are as hard as your attitude." He spoke very softly, and he did not show any emotion on his face. His right hand, however, silently clasped 3 dark red needles, and he instilled his spiritual energy into them. His fingertips shivered, and the needles flew towards Mu Yin. A malicious smile appeared on his face. The bone-dissolving needles would penetrate into the bones. Although they would not kill the victim, they would penetrate into the marrow and make the victim wish that they were dead. Later, the woman would roll and wail on the ground in pain. How lowly and ugly would she be? Humph! Liberty City wanted to make the Dark Palace let them go with a honey trap? That depended on whether the 10,000 Swords village agreed or not. Suddenly, he felt a slight pain on his neck, as if something had pierced into his skin. Subconsciously, he reached out his hand and touched it. His fingertips were wet. When he brought it to his eyes, he found that it was a tiny drop of blood. Did some bug bite him? Just as he was thinking this, he suddenly felt a bone-piercing pain in his limbs and bones. Ah, it hurts. It hurts. Help. Elder Liang, what happened? The people of the 10,000 Swords village hurried to support the middle-aged man, only to find that the bones all over his body were vaguely scarlet, as if they were burning. Why? Why does it look like he was hit by the bone-dissolving needles? The people of the 10,000 Swords village, who had just seen Elder Liang shoot out the needles, looked at Mu Yin in horror. What on earth did you do? Mu Yin twirled a dark red needle with her fair fingers and chuckled. What do you think I did? Of course, it's to give him a taste of his own medicine. After speaking, she looked at Beidang, making trouble without reason, gathering people to besiege the city, plotting to murder. So this is how your profound Palace handles things? Beidang Yi's face turned red as he fiercely glared at myriad Sword Manor's people. Without my order, no one is allowed to make a move. But this slut injured Elder Liang. Shut up. Do you have a right to speak here? A hot-tempered young man beside Beidang Yi sternly scolded. The people of the 10,000 Swords Manor were furious, but they did not dare to say anything. Beidang Yi clears his throat and looks at Mayan with a complicated expression. Miss, are you really the city lord of Liberty City? Mu Yin, I don't want to say the same thing a third time. Beidang Yi looked at the 6 Stars Pagoda. Does this cultivation treasure belong to Miss? So what if I am? Beidang Yi and his fellow apprentices behind him looked at each other and said in a stern tone, I don't know where you got this 6 Stars Pagoda from, but a cultivation treasure of this grade is not something a little girl like you should have. An ordinary man's wealth is his ruin. You should have heard of this saying, right? Right now, the people gathered here are just some rogue cultivators who don't know what's good and what's not, so no one wants to snatch it. If one day the true effect of this 6 Stars Pagoda is known, do you think your Liberty City will still be able to survive? Chapter 3280. Mu Yin glanced at him. Then what do you want? Beidang Yi puffed out his chest. Miss, name a price. Transfer this 6-star pagoda to my Darking Palace. Such a top-grade treasure can only be used in a big sect like my Darking Palace. The young man behind Beidang Yi glanced at Wei Mian and the others and sneered. Look at your poor appearance. You must be short of money, right? How about it? Transfer the 6-star pagoda to us, or the whole Liberty City will submit to my Darking Palace. I guarantee that you country bumpkins will be able to live well in the future. Butcher and the rest were fuming with anger. Tai Tu, who had the worst temper, cursed without hesitation. Bullshit. Are you the country bumpkins? Do you know where I used to live? Before he could finish, Rui Nyang pulled him and gave him a warning look. Mu Yin played with his cyan token casually and looked at Beidang Yi and the others. So, why do you think that you are more qualified than our Liberty City to have the 6-star pagoda? Huh? Isn't your question nonsense? The people of Dark Palace laughed. Can a small, shabby city that has just been built be mentioned in the same breath with my Darking Palace? My Darking Palace has taken a fancy to your cultivation magic treasure and is willing to pay crystals to buy it. We're giving you face. Don't be so shameless. Beidang Yi stopped the person who spoke. His eyes looked at Mu Yin without blinking and said in a deep voice, If I'm not wrong, the mystery hidden in this 6-star pagoda should be far less than what it is showing now. Even if it is also a magic treasure used for cultivation, its assistance and guidance to soul masters is different from others. Ordinary cultivation magic treasures can't compare with it. Mu Yin nodded. It's not bad to be able to see this. Beidang Yi thought of the mystery of the 6-star pagoda, and even his heart couldn't help beating faster. When I was cultivating in the 6-star pagoda, I could feel its special assistance to puppet masters. Because of this, I could break the bottleneck that I had been stuck in for many years. I'm sure that this 6-star pagoda was built for puppet masters, and it can only be used by my Darking Palace. If it's left in Liberty City and used by these ordinary cultivators who don't have any foundation as soul masters, it'll be a complete waste of God's gifts. Mayan looks at him with a smile that isn't a smile. Deeply admire you for your unrequited love. Unfortunately, you guessed wrong. Beidhengyi's face suddenly flushed red, and he angrily said, "What did I say wrong?" Mu Yin ignored him and waved at a male cultivator in the crowd. "Are you a soul master?" The male cultivator was stunned for a long time before he said in a daze, "No, I'm a sword cultivator." Mayan chuckles and continues to ask, "How do you feel about cultivating in the Hexstar Pagoda? Does it benefit your sword Dao?" "Yes, of course." At the mention of the 6 Stars Pagoda, the male cultivator became excited. "My father used to say that my sword intent was too soft, but after entering the 6 Stars Pagoda a few times, my sword intent became extremely fierce." Mayan, do you think that this 6 Star Pagoda is specifically for puppet masters to cultivate? How is that possible? The male cultivator's excited voice suddenly rises. "This 6 Star Pagoda is clearly set up for us sword cultivators." Beidheng-yi and the fellow apprentices behind him widen their eyes. "How?" "I also think that this 6 Star Pagoda is set up for us puppet masters." "That's right. Some of the training inside is even more useful than my master's guidance." Chapter 3281. Mayan sneers. Do you know why 6 Stars Pagoda is called 6 Stars? Because from the very beginning, this pagoda was aimed at nurturing 6 different types of combat cultivators. What? Against 6 types of cultivators? How can there be such a cultivation treasure in this world? Mu Yin stretched herself and stood up from the chair. Snapping her fingers, she said, "Since we've already talked about this topic, there's no better time than today. From today onwards, shall we begin the competition for the 6 Star list?" Wait a minute. Just now, they were still arguing about the ownership of 6 Stars Pagoda. Why did they suddenly start some ranking competition? Furthermore, what the hell was the 6 Star ranking? The 6 Star roll includes the 1,000 average roll, Ganhwa roll, void roll, sky-splitting roll, Hiyu roll, and fortune roll. The 1,000 average list focuses on battle techniques, while the Sky Splitter list focuses on spiritual power. The Ganhwa roll tested one's support abilities. The Void list tested one's divine sense, mental state, and willpower. The Hiyu list tested one's control skills. The Fortune roll tests a cultivator's speed. As soon as she finished speaking, the token in her hand emitted a dazzling fluorescent light. He quickly flew up into the air. From the sky came a deep and old voice that was deep and mechanical. "The 6 Stars order is out. Following my master's orders, the 6 Stars list is opened." The light grew brighter and brighter, completely enveloping the entire 6 Stars Pagoda. However, the aged voice did not stop. It was like an ancient and heavy bell that rang in everyone's ears. Chinkuan's 6 Stars, ancient flowing sound. Qianjun, Ganhua, Nothingness, Splitter, Hiyu, and Fu Wang's 6 lists have now been opened. I hope that all the Xiozha will strive to be the first. Raise your cultivation and not let down the world, not let down the common people. The voice slowly dissipated between heaven and earth. The 6 Star order floating in the air retracts its light and returns to Mu Yan's hand. Only then did Mu Yan look at the dumbfounded people of Darkeen Palace. "You want the 6 Stars Pagoda? Sure. As long as you become the first on the Hiyu list, I will sell the 6 Stars Pagoda to your Darkeen Palace. How about it?" Hiyu's list corresponded to control skills. It was practically tailor-made for soul master puppeteers. Everyone from the Darkeen Palace looked at the 6 Stars Pagoda with even more fervent gazes. At the same time, he was eager to try. Beidheng, he asked directly, "How do we fight for the first place of Hiyu list?" Mu Yin, enter the 6 Star Pagoda and choose the trial. There's already someone else on the list? If there was no one else, then as long as he had a good result, he would be able to become number 1. That was naturally impossible. Mayan smiles with surprise. This 6 Star Pagoda is something from the Xiozhan continent. There are indeed many names on the list, but most of them are the results left behind by the cultivators of the Xiozhan continent. Huh? Cultivation continent? Are you talking about the lower realm that doesn't even have immortal chi? Isn't it easy to surpass those people? Little girl, you really didn't lie to us? If we become the top of the He You list, don't go back on your word, okay? Mu Yin beamed and said, Don't worry, there's so many people here listening. I am the City Lord of Liberty City and also the owner of 6 Stars Pagoda. My words naturally count. All right, then I'll take the first place and show you. Beitang rubbed his palms together and entered the Hex Star Pagoda without any hesitation. The trial of the He You list could not be said to be difficult, but it was not easy either. It targeted the cultivator's potential, not their current strength. Beitang Yi's status in Darking Palace was transcendent. To be accepted as a disciple by the sect master, his talent was naturally not ordinary. Chapter 3282. 1 second remember, LoveNet, providing you with wonderful reading. So, after only 1 hour, he successfully passed the checkpoint. The monsters in the checkpoint disappeared, and a list appeared in front of him. Beitang looked up excitedly. It was densely packed with names, but he didn't know most of them. When he reached the top of the list, he finally saw his name. However, this made him suddenly open his eyes wide, revealing an incredulous expression. First place, Yi Liangshan. Second place, Beitang. Third place, Su Yi. How could it be? Who is this Yi Liangshan? Why is his final score higher than mine? Beitang gritted his teeth and rushed into the trial field again. Outside the 6-star tower, time passed little by little. But Beitang and the disciples of the Dark Moon Palace who went and didn't come out. What's going on? Could it be that your Liberty City is up to something? The people of the Dark Moon Palace and the 10,000 Swords Villa were anxiously pacing back and forth. Even many people in Liberty City looked worried, looking at the direction of the 6-star tower from time to time. Only Mayan was leisurely drinking tea and eating pastries, as if she didn't care about what was happening in front of her. Miss, what if the people of the Dark Moon Palace really snatched the first place on the He You list? Mayan, then give it to them. Miss. The butcher and the others were anxious and wanted to say something. Luo Yu, who had slept enough, strolled over unhurriedly. She took a spirit fruit from the short table next to Mayan and started to eat it. While eating, she looked at the butcher and the others with a pair of quick-witted eyes. Don't worry about it. Do you know who is at the top of the 6-star list? Who? Is it Miss? By the way, if it's a record set by Miss, no one can break it. Looking at the confident expressions of the people of Liberty City, Luo Yu rolled her eyes and said with a smile, It's a pity that the first place on the 6-star list is not Mayan, but Yi Liangshan. What? Who is Yi Liangshan? Luo Yu said in all seriousness. Yi Liangshan, the great god Yi, is known as the list's slaughtering demon in the cultivation land. There is no list in the world that he can't be at the top of. No one has ever broken the record she created. As long as Yap Liangshan is involved in the ranking list, you have to be prepared to be dominated by her. Bang! Mu Yin knocked Luo Yu's head with an explosive pellet and glared at him. Stop talking nonsense. Luo Yu stuck out her tongue and laughed slyly. Since he had nothing better to do, he decided to play with them. Who asked these people to want to kill him back then? As expected, Butcher, Tai Tu, and the rest were all stunned by Luo Yu's coaxing. He couldn't help but wonder who this Yi Liangshan was. Could it be that he was more powerful than their city lord? Only the corner of Ma Qian's mouth twitches as he stands behind Mu Yin. Wait a minute. If you remember correctly, Mrs. name in Tianguang ruins was Yi Liangshan, right? At this moment, a few figures suddenly rushed out of the 6 Stars Pagoda angrily. At this time, Beitang was no longer looking at Mu Yin with infatuation in his eyes, only anger of being fooled. City Lord Jun, are you fooling us? Why can't we win that Yi Liangshan no matter how hard we try? Mu Yin glanced at him calmly and curled her lips into a smile. If you can't win, it's naturally because you're not as skilled as him. Otherwise, what else could it be? Beitang roared. Impossible. He's just a low-level cultivator from the cultivation continent. At most, he's only at the peak of the mortal cultivation realm. How could I not be able to defeat him? For mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 3283. Mu Yin sighs. Yi Liangshan isn't very good at talent related to the He You list, so his points aren't high. There's still a lot of room for improvement. But you guys can't even get first place in the Hiyu list. This is enough to prove that the Dark Moon Palace isn't qualified to have a 6-star list. Isn't that right? Nonsense. Damn it, I think this list is fake, right? Yeah, what you Liang-chun? I've never heard of him. If you have the ability, send someone to compete with us in puppetry. If the Dark Moon Palace loses, we'll leave on the spot. Mu Yin bites off the last bit of the fruit and throws the core into the trash can. Then she claps her hands and stands up, a faint smile on her face. I was waiting for you to say that. Shao-Chi, let these frogs at the bottom of the well see what a real puppeteer is. Luo Yu, who is squatting beside the chair, cleans his hands and slowly stands up. The youngster has fair skin and delicate features. When he smiles, there are 2 shallow dimples on his cheeks. His entire person carried a kind of clear and pure youthful aura that made people feel carefree and happy. But a clean youngster also represents weakness. Beidangi frowns and says unhappily, Lord Jun, are you joking? Do you think that a kid who hasn't even grown his hair can beat us in puppetry? Whether it's appearance or age, Luo Yu isn't even 20 years old. He isn't like Mu Yin, who has already formed his immortal bone. Normal people can't use their divine sense to check the age of their bones. That's why Beidangi thinks that Mu Yin is playing with them. TSK, this little brother won't cry when it hurts, right? Ha! Senior, he doesn't even need to do anything for this kind of rookie. We can control a puppet and beat him until he begs for mercy. The Dark Moon Palace disciples laugh. The 10,000 Swords Village disciples are gloating and fanning the flames. Senior Beidang, you should understand now, right? These Xiao Yao sect people are so arrogant and sinister. If you send out such an ignorant kid, even if you lose in the end, others will only say that you are bullying the weak. A disciple of the 10,000 Swords Village, who had a short beard and looked to be twice the age of Beitang, flatteringly called Beitang his senior brother. If we don't teach them a lesson, they will think that the reputation of the profound Yin Palace is something that this shabby little city, can casually trample on. Another member of the 10,000 Swords Manor looked at Mu Yin wretchedly and echoed, that woman looks young and her cultivation is not high. Who knows how she got the position of city lord? How can such a shameless slut be worthy of possessing a treasure like the 6 Stars Pagoda? Haha, if senior brother Beidang is really interested in her, you can bring her back as a concubine to play with. Beidang glared at the people from Myriad Swords sect. Don't talk nonsense. However, he did not say anything else. Instead, he stared coldly at Luo Yu and said, Brat, you'd better go down quickly. Get someone with real ability to come up. Luo Yu stretched her body and said slowly, As for me, I'm indeed the weakest in the Xiao Yao sect. If you want to get someone with more ability to fight, that's not a problem. But you still have to get rid of me, the weakest one, right? You can't even win against me, yet you still want to challenge my senior brother and sister. Haha, where's your face? You, Beitang flew into a rage. Chapter 3284. But before he could speak, Luo Yu restrained his expression and cut him off. It's getting late. 6 senior sister and I are in a hurry to go back for dinner. Let's make the competition simple. As he spoke, he slowly opened his hands to the sides. Faint white light emitted from his palms. As long as any one of you can summon and control more puppets than me, you win. How about it? In the next moment, the 3rd layer of Mirror Domain was activated. Countless puppets that were already made appeared one after another in front of the crowd. 10, 20, 100, 200, 1,000, 2,000. In the end, the entire square was densely packed with all kinds of puppets. Some were humanoid, some were beast-shaped, some were as tall as mountains, and some were as small as ants. The scariest thing was that these puppets did not just stand there blankly. Instead, they moved quickly under the control of an invisible divine sense. Some flew into the air, some crawled under the feet of the disciples of the Dark Moon Palace and the 10,000 Swords Village. Some were neatly arranged, ready to go. The angry and disdainful expressions of Beitang, and the others froze on their faces. They could not believe their eyes as they looked at the puppets surrounding them. In their minds, there were only 4 words: "This is impossible." And the disciples of the 10,000 Swords village were completely scared silly. When the densely packed puppets flew over, some people squatted on the ground with their hands over their heads, shivering. Some people screamed and wanted to escape, but ran into the murderous puppet army. A handsome young man in a blue robe smiled as he stood among the thousands of puppets. His hands were slightly open, and the dimples on his cheeks were faintly discernible. His black eyes were like obsidian, pure and sparkling. His expression was the same as before. Even the curve of his lips did not increase or decrease. However, at this moment, no one would think that this was just a weak and inexperienced young man. He was like a king that could naturally control puppets. In the blink of an eye, he had already laid out an inescapable net. Thousands of soldiers and horses, there was nowhere to run. Wei Mian had already stood up from his seat, staring blankly at the blue-clothed young man in the puppet army. His body unconsciously trembled, and his eyes faintly flashed with a bright light. Who was this young man? How could he activate? Mirror domain? Why does this scene seem so similar? So similar? Luo Yu looked at Beitang Yi and said with a smile, "Are these puppets enough?" Beitang Yi was flabbergasted. His lips were trembling, and he couldn't utter a single syllable for a long time. The other disciples of the Darkeen Palace were all dumbfounded. Luo Yu tilted her head. "Isn't it enough? Then let's continue." As soon as he finished speaking, the luster on his hand became even more dazzling. The surrounding rocks and trees began to gather around him. The originally lifeless object seemed to have been bestowed with a soul at this moment. They quickly combined and smelted until they became dozens of huge puppets. And this process only lasted for a few dozen breaths. "Enough! Enough! Don't continue!" One of the profound Een Palace's disciples behind Beitang, he finally couldn't help but roar. His eyes were filled with awe and fear. Luo Yu looked at Beitang Yi and smiled. "Now it's your turn." Beitang Yi's eyes stared blankly, as if he was possessed. Chapter 3285. It wasn't until the junior brother behind him pushed him that he came back to his senses. The arrogant young man revealed an unwilling expression, but it was only for a moment before it turned into a helpless bitterness. He sighed and lowered his proud head. "We, the Dark Moon Palace, admit defeat. May I know your name and where is your master? Are you a disciple of a great master from the Over-the-Wave Palace?" "The Over-the-Wave Palace? What's that?" Luo Yu shook his head. "I've never heard of it. My master is naturally the Xiaoyao sect. Who else could it be?" As he spoke, he waved his hand, and the dense puppet army was put into his storage space. Luo Yu ignored Beitang Yi and returned to Mu Yin happily. "Sixth senior sister, how was my performance? I didn't embarrass you, did I?" Mu Yin gave him a spirit fruit. "Good performance. You deserve a reward." "Just a spirit fruit?" Although she was complaining, Luo Yu still accepted the fruit with a smile and chewed on it happily. At this moment, there was no more puppet army in Mirror Field. The blue-robed youth looked like a clean and innocent youth who knew nothing about the ways of the world. However, everyone present, whether it was the disciples of the Dark Moon Palace, the 10,000 Swords Manor, or the citizens of Xiaoyao City, were looking at the young man with awe and amazement. At this moment, they all looked at the young man with awe and amazement. Butcher and the others couldn't help but sigh. Sure enough, a person who could be the junior brother of our miss can't be an ordinary person. However, this wasn't ordinary at all. It was a little too shocking. The Dark Moon Palace swore to provoke them, but now they suffered a crushing defeat without even fighting. At this moment, they couldn't help but feel embarrassed and dejected. Beitang Yi gritted his teeth and glanced at Mu Yan. In the end, he didn't say anything and waved his hand. "Let's go." The people of the Dark Moon Palace and the 10,000 Swords Manor hurriedly followed him. However, they hadn't walked a few steps. They heard a pleasant female voice behind them. "Wait a minute. Who said you can leave?" Beitang suddenly turned around with unconcealable anger in his eyes. We have already admitted defeat and left. What else do you want? The girl sitting in front of him had a lazy expression, and the corners of her mouth seemed to be curled up. The faint golden rays of light fell on her flawless white jade skin, making her look even more picturesque, absolutely stunning. But at this moment, no one would think that she was a gentle and harmless girl. Even her junior brother was so powerful. As the senior sister and the city lord of Liberty City, if she did not have some ability, how could she convince others? Do you think that Liberty City is a place where you can provoke as you please and leave after provoking us? Or is it the quality of the people of the Defying Palace? You only allow yourselves to stir up trouble, and when you can't handle it, you don't want to pay any price? Beitang Yi's face turned red, and the anger in his eyes was about to burst out. However, he was unable to refute Mu Yan's words. Then what do you want? Maya knocks her fingers on the back of the chair. Then, she sits up straight and reveals a seemingly pure smile. She twists her right index finger and thumb together and rubs them together. In this world, there's no problem that can't be solved with a lot of jingsure. Beitang Yi was startled and only reacted after a long while. Then I wonder how many crystal stones City Lord Jun thinks we should compensate. Mine glances at Zhou Zixuan. Zhou Zixuan immediately takes out a silver abacus and calculates on it for a while before he says loudly, Chapter 3286. 1 second. Remember LoveNet to provide you with exciting reading. The riot has led to the temporary closure of the 6 Stars Tower, which has reduced our income. Also, the reputation of Liberty City has been damaged, and the time of the City Master has been delayed. In conclusion, the senior brothers of the Dark Moon Palace have to pay us 3,096,000 crystals. Since you are also customers of the Liberty Sect, we will count it as 3 million crystals. The disciples of the Dark Een Palace sucked in a breath of cold air. 3 million crystals? Why don't you just rob someone? This is too much. Do you really think our Dark Een Palace is afraid of you? Senior brother Beitang, let's go back and report to Master. Shut up. Beitang Yi shouted. Haven't you guys lost enough face today? You don't have to worry about the crystal stones. I'll pay for them myself. Finished speaking, he strode over to Mu Yan, threw her a storage ring, and said coldly, the crystal stones and heaven and earth treasures inside add up to more than 3 million crystal stones. Can we go now? Mu Yan takes the storage ring and examines it. A bright smile immediately blossomed on his face. Even if Beitang Yi was currently burning with rage, he was still dazzled by this beautiful smile that was even more dazzling than the blazing sun. In the next moment, a thin and somewhat wrinkled talisman was handed to him. No matter how you look at it, our 6-star pagoda is to blame for this matter. It caused you to fail in your breakthrough. Take this talisman as compensation. Beitang Yi thought in his mind. Compensation? How could a mere talisman make up for the rare opportunity to make a breakthrough? However, the words that were about to come out of his mouth were completely forgotten by the faint smile in those peach blossom eyes. He took the talisman in a daze and returned to his fellow apprentices. Only when the junior brother beside him called out to him did he suddenly come back to his senses. Let's go, he said with some embarrassment. This time, no one stopped him. The Mystic Een Palace disciples stepped onto their flying swords and sped away. The disciples of the 10,000 Swords village hurriedly followed. However, before they could fly into the air, a net descended from the sky and pulled all of them back from the sky. The people of the Dark Een Palace can leave after paying their debts, but who said you can leave as well? The people of the 10,000 Swords Manor were terrified and wanted to cry for help. However, he discovered that the disciples of the Mystic Een Palace had already flown far away. They were shocked and angry. What do you want to do? This is a matter between Liberty City and the Dark Palace. What does it have to do with the 10,000 Swords village? What right do you have to keep us here? Mu Yan raised her eyebrows. Didn't you throw the bone-dissolving needle just now? That's right. So what if we lost it? It didn't hurt you, did it? On the contrary, our elder Liang is in so much pain that he wishes he were dead. What else do you want? Mayan chuckles. I don't want anything. However, the motto of a Xiao Yao sect has always been that if people don't offend us, we won't offend them. If people offend us, we'll cut the weeds and destroy the roots. I love my sect, and I have never thought of going against the principles of my sect. What do you think we should do? The people of the Myriad Swords Manor were filled with unwillingness. But now, the situation was stronger than they were. Even the disciples of the Darkeen Palace had been defeated. What else could they do? We will pay, okay? Wasn't it just 3 million crystals? We, the Myriad Swords Manor, are willing to concede defeat. I'm sorry, but you might have made a mistake. Mu Yin interrupts them with a smile. The people of Darkeen Palace really only need to compensate 3 million crystals, but your voices have polluted my ears, and your looks have polluted my eyes. The compensation needs to be 10 times more. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit Zii. Chapter 3287. 10 times, that means 30 million crystals. Are you kidding me? 30 million crystals? Why don't you just rob a bank? Liberty City, I'm warning you. Don't cross the line. Do you really think that the 10,000 Swords sect is a pushover? We are willing to compensate you with 6 million crystals and a batch of spiritual medicines. You should be satisfied with that, right? I suggest that you stop while you're ahead. If you really piss us off, you will be known as a robber. Do you think that Liberty City will have a peaceful life after that? Mu Yin was still silent. Somebody in the crowd suddenly roared in grief and indignation. Isn't the 10,000 Swords sect loots other people's properties, murders and loots? Where I do beasts like you have to criticize others. Mu Yin turned around. She saw that an unaffiliated cultivator who had joined Liberty City not long ago dashed out of the crowd and fell on his knees before her. City Master, my family was plotted against and robbed by the 10,000 Sword Village. Eventually, my family was ruined. He even kidnapped my younger sister. She is a pitiful little girl who has never experienced the world. Who knows what kind of torture she has suffered now. City Master, my sect was set up by the 10,000 Sword Village too. The 10,000 Swords Village abducts handsome men and beautiful women from small families and sects, locks them up, and sells them for profit. The money that the 10,000 Swords Village rakes in is not just 30 million, but even double. More and more people began to kneel down to seek redress for their grievances, while crying and complaining. Some of them were even begging in indignation that they would be willing to do their part if the 10,000 Swords Village was attacked. Near Blue Wave City, the 10,000 Swords Village had been dominating the market with the support of the Dark Moon Palace, the Clear Sky Sect, and other major sections. Many unaffiliated cultivators were actually from the small families and sects that had been persecuted by the 10,000 Swords Village. Before, they had been isolated and cowardly. They did not dare do anything even when they saw people from the 10,000 Sword Village. But today, after witnessing the capability of Liberty City that even the Dark Moon Palace was wary of, and Luo Yu, who could summon thousands of puppets, hope rose in the hearts of those people again. If they could take revenge and save their families from then on, they would certainly be grateful to Liberty City and risk their lives for it. Mu Yin looked at Wei Mian and Zhou Zixuan. How could the two of them not understand what she meant? At this time, Zhou Zixuan was already prostrating himself in admiration towards Mu Yin. No wonder Miss would ask if the Mystic Yin Palace and 10,000 Swords Village were rich. It turned out that he had planned to take advantage of the situation from the very beginning. But thinking about it, this was really the fastest way to get crystals. With the 3 million crystals from the Dark Moon Palace and the 10,000 Swords Village, he would not be able to afford it. In the future, would Liberty City still have to worry about crystals? The great city protecting array could be activated day and night. Also, after the 10,000 Swords village was destroyed, both those who were rescued and those who intended to avenge the 10,000 Swords village would certainly pledge their loyalty to Liberty City. Even the power of their army would rise to another level. This was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Killing 3 birds with 1 stone. The young miss was the young miss, and the city lord was the city lord. How could he compare to her in terms of foresight? Zhou Zixuan and Wei Mian happily went to deploy troops to attack 10,000 Sword Manor. Just like what Wei Guan had said before. Without the help of the Darkeen Palace, a third-rate force like the 10,000 Swords Manor could be easily destroyed by the free, unfettered army. Only 1 day had passed. The 50,000 troops of Liberty City returned with vast quantities of resources and the people who had been rescued from the 10,000 Swords Manor. Chapter 3288. 1 second remember, Love Net, providing you with wonderful reading. Miss, these are the crystals and treasures we brought back from the 10,000 Swords Manor. There are even a lot of the materials on the list you want. At least for the next 3 years, we don't have to worry about the expenses of Liberty City and the army. Zhou Zixuan passed the list to Mu Yin in high spirits. Mu Yin passed it to Luo Yu. Go with the scholar and General Wei to check the supplies, then settle down the people that were rescued from the 10,000 Swords Manor. Luo Yu took the list and nodded, but then asked curiously, "What about you, Sixth Sister?" "Mine. There's only half a month left before the Tianguang Ruins list is updated. Tianguang Ruins time. I have to go slaughter the list." Ew. Only his Sixth Sister could say that slaughtering the list was as simple as chopping melons and vegetables. After a pause, Mayan said, "Little Seven, when we come out of Tianguang Ruins, I have something to tell you. About the past she saw in the memories of the eldest brother. About the identity of Wei Mian and the others. About the descendants of Master Shiqing. And about Luo Yu's identity and origin. What does Sixth Sister want to tell him? Why does she look so serious?" While thinking, Luo Yu wobbled to the warehouse of the city lord's mansion. Under Zhou Zixuan's welcome, she checked the supplies and picked out the refining materials that Mayan wanted. Then she said, "What about the people rescued from the 10,000 Swords Manor? Little Seven Gongzi, please come with me." The two came to a basement of the city lord's mansion. A simple medical station had been set up here. Hundreds of people were lying side by side on clean beds, and the maids of the city lord's mansion were using talismans and treating them. Those bastards from the 10,000 Swords Manor are really inhuman. Zhou Zixuan gritted his teeth. Those kidnapped boys and girls are to be sold to nobles with special hobbies. So they need to go through a long period of training. That training process is so cruel that it's unbearable to watch. Although the elixir given by Miss has the effect of reviving the dead, the quantity is too little. So we can only give them healing talismans with slightly less effect. Luo Yu nodded, frowning. She looked over and saw that everyone lying on the bed was covered with scars. Some people were unconscious, but they kept groaning. There were also some who stared at the ceiling with empty and numb gazes. Even though she had personally witnessed the hellish scene in Fusang City, Luo Yu was still disgusted by these insane beasts. Everyone from the 10,000 Swords village is dead? Of course not, Zhou Zixuan hurriedly said. Miss has already instructed us that although these sheep have been plucked bald, there might still be oil left after squeezing them a little. Wouldn't it be too easy for them to die so easily? Luo Yu burst out laughing. It was indeed the style of his sixth senior sister. Suddenly, the smile on his face froze, and his gaze fell on a spot not far away. There was a man leaning against the wall. He was wearing a blue robe and a white jade crown. He had long eyebrows and a pair of phoenix-like eyes. His temperament was gentle like jade. It was just that his face was sickly pale, and there were deep and shallow scars on his neck and exposed arms. However, he didn't seem to care about this little injury and weakness at all. His slender and thin fingers twirled a cup, and he was drinking leisurely. When he sensed someone approaching, the man turned around and gave Luo Yu a faint smile, Shao-Chi, long time no see. Third senior brother. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the Self-Love website. Chapter 3289. 1 second remember LoveNet to provide you with exciting reading. Tingguang Ruin's World of Slaughter announces that the first place on the slaughter list of the 35th round of the Guiyu period is Yi Liangchun with 98,000 points. Yi Liangchun, please come to the killing list to get the order of Guiyu 35 as soon as possible. Mu Yin tossed the token in her hand and said to Ma Quishan, you and your father will be responsible for the recruitment and management of the #1 gang in the world. If you have any difficulties, you can tell me. Ma Quishan nodded and said with a smile, don't worry, Mississippi. Your reputation in Tingguang Ruins is getting better and better. Many people want to submit to you now that they know that the world's #1 gang was created by you. Plus, the talisman you gave us is one of kind. Everyone in the gang is trying to buy it. Mayan nods, preparing to leave Tingguang Ruins. Suddenly, out of the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of a faintly discernible shadow at the back of the slaughter list. Her heart skipped a beat, and her figure suddenly flashed as she rushed over. Little light. Muyin appears in front of the youngster in a flash. A hint of panic flashed in the eyes of the originally indifferent youth. What are you doing? Shouldn't I be asking you that? Muyin looked at him and said, why do you look like you've seen a ghost when you see me? Why are you running in such a hurry? Xiao Guang bit her lip, averting her gaze. Didn't I tell you not to appear in front of me? Mu Yin is so angry that she wants to laugh. Brat, it was obviously you who appeared in front of me, but you came to complain first. Little Light turned and left. But before he could take a few steps, he heard the girl's soft voice behind him. Little Light, don't be afraid. No matter who is controlling you, I will definitely return your freedom. Little Light's body suddenly stiffened. He clenched his fists tightly at his sides. His straight back was slightly hunched, and he was even trembling slightly. Mu Yin worriedly steps forward. She was about to put her hand on his shoulder to ask if he was okay. The youth's low and hoarse voice rang in her ears. Don't you blame me? I almost hurt you. Won't you hate me? Mayan stares blankly. Then she presses her fingers on his soft short hair and gently rubs the top of his head. Fool! Xiao Guang is so handsome and cute. How could I hate him? The youth's face immediately turned red. Before Mu Yin could react, he had already scuttled several meters away. He glared at her, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word for a long time. However, his eyes were filled with longing and vitality. Mu Yin is simply about to be melted by his tsundere and adorable appearance, and the smile on her lips becomes more and more playful. But before he could speak, a black and red stripe faintly appeared on the youth's face. Little Light gave a muffled groan, his expression changing greatly. Not bothering to say anything more to Mayan, he resolutely clenches his teeth and disappears. Little Light. Looking at the empty space in front of her, Mu Yin stops smiling and her face turns frosty. No matter who controlled Little Light and caused Tingguang Ruins to be in such a foul state, it was impossible for them to escape. She would never let this matter rest. However, why did she keep feeling that the Little Light she saw this time seemed to have a little more vitality than before? Was she imagining things? Mu Yin shook her head, took out the floating light jade key, and left the Tingguang Ruins. She didn't notice that the originally densely packed cracks on the jade key that was emitting light were gradually fading and decreasing. Half a day after Mu Yin left the Tingguang Ruins, a man wrapped from head to toe in a black robe appeared in the vicinity of Floating Light Island. In front of him was Little Light, glaring at him with a cold face. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit Zii. Chapter 3290. Smack. Fury flashed across the black-robed man's eyes. The black token in his hand suddenly turned into a whip and lashed viciously at Little Light. Little Light gave a muffled grunt and curled up on the ground, moaning in pain. The black-robed man watched him suffer for a long while before snickering. He withdrew his hand, and the whip turned back into the token. I advise you to listen obediently and stop resisting. Otherwise, what awaits you will be 100 times more painful than now. With that, he turned to look at the door of Floating Light Island. He pressed the black token against the door and pushed. A dazzling light shone from the door. The black-robed man screamed and was sent flying hundreds of meters away, landing in the mud by the water's edge. He crawled up pathetically and roared in exasperation. Damn it! It's been corroded for so long, but why doesn't the door of Floating Light Island show any signs of loosening? If it can't be opened before the end of the Goa'yu period, how can I explain it to the Imperial Preceptor? The black-robed man spat on the ground and patted his body. His dirty clothes were immediately replaced with brand-new ones. He looked at Little Light, the black token in his hand glowing faintly. Has anything happened in Tianguang ruins recently? Why did the black flame token that the Imperial Preceptor gave me suddenly light up when I was outside? Little Light's body curled up tightly and trembled nonstop, not making a sound for a long while. The black-robed man kicked him hard. I'm asking you a question. Did you hear me? What happened in Tianguang ruins recently? Did anyone get close to Floating Light Island? No. After a long while, Little Light finally managed to spit out 2 words in a hoarse voice. The black-robed man kicked him again. You dog, you're not lying to me, are you? That shouldn't be possible. Under the control of the black flame token, this dog can't lie even if he wants to. He muttered to himself and looked at Little Light in disgust. Scram! Then he flew up into the sky and looked down at everything in Tianguang ruins. He watched the people below kill, struggle, and wail in pain for survival and freedom. The black-robed man's eyes revealed a carefree expression. It felt so good to be able to control the life and death of others. It was like a god looking at an ant. However, there were still not enough people in Tianguang ruins. That was why Floating Light Island's defenses had not been corroded. If he still couldn't succeed before the end of the Goa'yu period, the black-robed man shuddered at the thought of that lofty, supreme being expert. Suddenly, his line of sight shifted and fell on the carnage list. Yu Yang-chun. Was there such a person in the slaughter list before? However, this doubt only lasted for a moment before he tossed it to the back of his mind. The time ratio between the Massacre Skylight ruins and the outside world was 10-1. Over the years, it was unknown how many times the list had been changed. Some people had reached the top of the list, and some had been pulled down. Some were glorified, while others were miserable to the end. But no matter what, no one would be able to achieve 12 consecutive rounds of first place. Nor could he achieve 12 consecutive rounds of first place. This was the common name of the agreement that many people in Tianguang ruins knew. Why do you ask? The corners of the black-robed man's mouth curled up into a sinister smile. That was because the Imperial Advisor and the Black Flame token did not allow it. Mine had just walked out of Tianguang ruins when she saw Luoyu excitedly throwing herself at her 6th senior sister. Hurry, come with me. Chapter 3291. What's going on? Mayan staggers as she is pulled, her mind full of doubts. In the City Lord's mansion, where flying is forbidden, Luoyu is pulling her and flying as fast as lightning. Along the way, he even knocks down several decorations in the mansion, showing how anxious he is. Xiaoqi, what happened, Bang? The door is pushed open, and Mine's question gets stuck in her throat. Third brother. On the bed and room that originally belonged to Luoyu, there was a pale-faced man sleeping with his eyes closed. Who else could it be but her third brother, Chu Moli? She looks at Luoyu. She hears Luoyu gnashing her teeth. The 10,000 Swords manor took advantage of the fact that third brother was too weak after his ascension to capture him. His body is full of injuries now. 6th senior sister. Quickly treat third senior brother. Mayan's complexion suddenly sinks. The 10,000 Swords manner. They're really tired of living. She quickly goes to the bed and holds Chu Moli's hand. Sixth sister, how is third brother? Are his injuries serious? Mayan's hand that is pressing on his pulse trembles, and she calmly withdraws it. She raises her head and shows Luo Yu a shallow smile. Don't worry, it's just a flesh wound. It's nothing. Luo Yu sighs in relief. But third brother's body is too weak. I need the assistance of a musician to help him recuperate. Xiaoqi, go guard outside. No matter how long it takes, if I don't respond, don't let anyone in. Even you. Luo Yu nods, glancing worriedly at Chu Moli on the bed before turning to leave the room. She closes the door. Mayan quickly takes out a talisman and sticks it on the walls, windows, and doors. She then turns to look at the man on the bed, almost gnashing her teeth as she says, Third brother, are you courting death? The man who should be sleeping soundly slowly opens his eyes. A faint smile appears on his sickly pale face. Little sister, long time no see. Long time no see my ass. Mayan really wants to smash this guy's face with a Tian Mo-chin. She walks forward with a calm face and lifts the quilt covering Chu Moli's body. Then, she grabs his trousers with both hands and fiercely pulls. With a tearing sound, the soft white trousers are torn in half. Chu Moli's legs were exposed. However, it was not as pale and smooth as the skin on his face. Some of them had a pair of pitch-black, skinny legs with strange black bubbles constantly popping up on the surface of their skin. If this could still be called a leg. Even though she's already mentally prepared, Mayan still feels her vision blur. His hands were clenched so tightly that creaking sounds could be heard. The veins on the back of his hands were almost popping out. Chu Moli's indifferent voice, which didn't reveal the slightest bit of pain, came from above her head. Little junior sister, although we are martial siblings, it's not good for you to be so careless, isn't it? After all, even Xiaobao knows that men and women can't share. Shut up. Muyan fiercely curses and glares at him. Chu Moli still wanted to tease her, but when he saw the girl's reddened eyes, he swallowed his words in the end. There was an indescribable gentleness in his eyes. For the first time, the way he looked at Mu Yin carried a little gentleness, as if he was comforting a little girl. There's no need to make a fuss. Before I met you, I had to experience this kind of backlash once every 15th of every month. The only difference is whether it's a little more torturous or a little more torturous. How could this be the same? She had seen Chu Moli's appearance when the curse flared up in the past. How could it be as serious as it is now? Chapter 3292. Moreover, at that time, she had only just met her fellow disciples of the Xiaoyao sect. Even when she saw her third senior brother suffering, it was only because of the benevolence of a doctor. She didn't empathize with him. But now, to her, every member of the Xiaoyao sect was her most important family. How could she look at such a terrifying injury and remain indifferent? Mu Yin takes a deep breath, and with great difficulty, she stabilizes her emotions. She turns to look at Chu Moli and says through gritted teeth, Did the backlash of the curse start from 3 months ago, when you drew the 100 ghosts rushing to the moon painting? Chu Moli smiles, pulls the quilt over his legs, and gives an irrelevant answer. Don't tell others about the relapse of the curse on my body. If Xiaoqi, eldest senior brother, and the others knew that Chu Moli was suffering so that they could improve their strength as soon as possible, how guilty and remorseful would they feel? So you also know that you can't let them know? Muyan is so angry that she wants to strangle him. Chu Moli says calmly, That's why I wanted to go to the floating island first and find you for treatment, little junior sister. Who knew that I would run into those fools of the Myriad Swords village? Muyan's face turns cold. Did they abuse you? No, they didn't. Chu Moli says lightly. I acted as their incompetent advisor for a while and probed the various forces on the floating island. When I heard about the Xiaoyao city, I guessed that it might be related to you. So I instigated the Myriad Swords village to test you. Mu Yin, it turns out that the cause of all these conflicts is actually him. Mu Yin looks at the gentle and shy man in front of her, and her mind is in a mess. Although the Xiaoyao 7 never act like ordinary people. But third senior brother, aren't you too abnormal, too immoral? You actually went to the Myriad Swords village to be an incompetent advisor. Mu Yin takes a deep breath to resist the urge to strangle him directly. Then how did you get the external injuries on your body? Chu Moli sighs and says, "It's actually your fault, little junior sister." My fault. I thought that since the 10,000 swords manner provoked you, you would personally come to take revenge. Who knew that neither you nor Xiaoqi would come? I was afraid that your subordinates would treat me as a lackey of the 10,000 swords village, so I could only injure myself a little so that I could come with the people who were kidnapped by the 10,000 swords village. Mu Yin's face is streaming with tears. How could it be your fault now? Mu Yin takes another deep breath and tells herself over and over again in her heart, "Don't be angry, don't be angry. Why were you angry at a pervert?" She takes out the Tiana Mochin and sits cross-legged on the edge of the bed. The expression on his face had already disappeared, leaving behind only a grave and concerned expression. Third senior brother, this treatment will take a long time. I want to try to cut open the meridians in your leg. Chu Moli frowned. It's best if you don't. Why? Don't you want to stand up? Chu Moli said indifferently. What's on my leg isn't poison, nor is it an injury. It's a curse. You should be very clear about this. But there's one thing I want little junior sister to understand. You're indeed extremely talented, and your musician skills are also unique in the world. But there are always some things in this world that the current you can't touch. He paused and said, maybe one day you can do it, but right now a curse is still not something you can touch. Mu Yin tightly wrinkles her brows. She meets Chu Moli's eyes and finally compromised. Okay, I understand. But one day, not only will I touch it, I will also make this so-called curse bow its head to my ear. Chapter 3293. Chu Moli chuckles. Good. I'll wait for that day. The sound of the zither slowly resounds, and white light envelopes Chu Moli. Even though Chu Moli has always maintained a gentle and calm expression, fine beads of sweat begin to appear on his forehead. His clothes have long been soaked in sweat. The black bubbles that were originally slowly rising on Chu Moli's legs now seem to be boiling. What kind of pain and suffering must he endure under such torture? And there is no way to alleviate this kind of pain. Chu Moli is sweating like rain, but his expression seems indifferent as usual. But the hands that are pressed on both sides of the bed almost break the mattress and the wood below. The blood that oozes from his fingertips slowly enshrouds the snow-white bedsheets. Mu Yan's condition is also not much better than his. She still doesn't know what the curse that third brother spoke of is. Third brother won't let her analyze and understand in depth. So she can only use the stupidest method. That is to use the Shun musician skill, art of Qi Huang, to forcibly heal and regenerate the flesh and meridians that have been damaged by the curse. The energy of the curse is limited. Every full moon night, it will accumulate enough energy to erupt. After the eruption exhausts the energy, the muscles of the whole body will gradually heal and recover. In the past, when there was no Mayan, Chu Moli completely relied on suffering to get through. But as Chu Moli's cultivation gets higher and higher, the mysterious power that he can use is getting stronger and wider. But at the same time, the backlash caused by the curse in his body will also increase day by day, making him unable to bear it. And there is very little that Mu Yin can do for Chu Moli, even because of the strengthening of the curse's energy. Now, even floating like a dream can't alleviate Chu Moli's pain. The only thing that Mu Yin can do is nothing more than to use the Shun musician skill to speed up the consumption of the curse's energy so that Chu Moli can endure the backlash faster. The sound of the zither is getting louder and sharper, as if it's going to pierce people's eardrums. Even with the soundproofing talisman, Luo Yu, who is guarding outside, can hear the ear-piercing sound of the zither. He can't help but look inside worriedly. Didn't Sixth Sister say that third brother's injury is not serious? Sixth Senior Sister only needed to casually treat those superficial wounds, and she would be able to heal them. Why is it taking so long now? Just as he was worrying, his vision suddenly blurred. A white-robed man appeared in front of him. Luo Yu was shocked. How could he not feel anything when someone got close to him? If this person wanted his head, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. Li Weiran. When she saw who it was, Luo Yu was shocked. Didn't the perverted man that Sixth Senior Sister spoke of disappear for several days? Why did it suddenly appear again? Li Weiran turned his head and looked at Luo Yu. He asked in a good mood, "Where's Mayan?" Luo Yu composed herself. Sixth Sister is treating someone. Li Weiran nodded and walked past him to enter the room. Wait. Luo Yu is anxious. Sixth Senior Sister said that no one is to disturb her when she's treating her illness. Li Weiran's lips curled up. Do you think you, or your talisman, can stop me if I want to enter quietly? I'm not asking for your opinion, but seeing that you're Mayan's junior brother, I'm giving you some face. Luo Yu was infuriated. This guy looked like a dog, and his voice was gentle and refined. But the words he said were shameless to a certain extent. No wonder even Sixth Sister couldn't do anything to him. Chapter 3294. Li Weiran didn't wait for Luo Yu to reply. He strode forward and pushed the door open. I said not to disturb. Not to disturb. Luo Yu growled. Countless tiny puppets were already moving towards Li Weiran, no matter what Sixth Senior Sister was hiding. But the treatment must not be interrupted. Otherwise, what if Third Senior Brother's injuries worsened? However, just as he released his puppets, he felt a bone-chilling chill in his heart. Luo Yu almost instinctively retreated, but he was still a step too late. A slender and fair hand grasped his throat and tightened abruptly. Are you ordering me around? The air in his chest seemed to be sucked out in an instant. Luo Yu only felt a sharp pain in his throat. The blood in his body seemed to have frozen. So strong. So it really was as Sixth Senior Sister said. This Li Weiran was terrifyingly strong. So strong that they couldn't contend against him now. Bang! The closed door suddenly opened. The zither music inside had disappeared. It was replaced by Mayan's frosty voice. Li Weiran, what do you want to do to my junior brother? Li Weiran's movements paused. Then he very neatly released his hand and turned around with an innocent expression. It's just a joke. Mayan, why are you so serious? Suddenly, his voice paused, and he turned to look at Chu Moli, who was lying on the bed. Even through the red silk, she could feel his intense and doubtful gaze. Mayan looked at Li Weiran and then at Third Senior Brother. She felt that the atmosphere was a bit strange. There was no need to talk about Li Weiran. This guy looked innocent and pure on the surface, but he was actually full of evil tricks. Moreover, he didn't put anyone on the floating island in his eyes. But now, even with the red silk covering his eyes, he looked at Third Senior Brother differently than usual. Third Senior Brother, on the other hand, had never shown his emotions on his face. To see through his thoughts was simply more difficult than analyzing the rules of the heavens. But at this moment, Mayan clearly saw the astonishment and deep thought in his eyes. Third Senior Brother? Mayan couldn't help but call out. Chumoli came back to his senses and smiled at Mayan. This is... Mayan looked at her Third Senior Brother meaningfully before saying, Li Weiran, he started pestering me from the gravel hill. That's all I know. Li Weiran touched his nose and smiled gently. Muyin, what do you want to know? You can ask me directly. I will tell you everything I know. Muyin rolls her eyes and simply ignores him. Third brother, what's wrong? It's nothing. Chu Moli smiled lightly. I'm a bit tired, so I'm going to rest first. He didn't look too good at the moment. His face was pale and his lips were purple. Every breath he took seemed to take all his strength. Luo Yu looked at him worriedly, wanting to say something but hesitating. Third Senior Brother, take a good rest. Luo Yu, Li Weiran, follow me out first. The door closed. The only person left in the quiet room was Chu Moli, who was sleeping peacefully with his eyes closed. After a long time, he muttered softly as if to himself, "Surname, Li?" As soon as he walked out of the house, Li Weiran pretended to be nonchalant as he asked, "This is your third senior brother? Very interesting. How many fellow apprentices do you have, Mu Yin?" Mu Yin clenches her fists and turns around to give him a bright smile. Li Weiran was stunned, and his expression froze. Chapter 3295. In the next moment, he felt pain on his face and stumbled back a few steps. When he regained his senses, he touched his face in disbelief. He was hit. He was actually slapped in the face. Li Weiran looked at Mayan, his expression a little confused. "You hit me." Mayan felt a little guilty. After all, Li Weiran was much stronger than her. But when she thought about how Xiao Qi was almost strangled by this little pervert, Mayan wanted to strangle him to death. Pinching the void spirit ring on her finger, Mayan said with a sullen face, "If you want me to help you get something from Tingguang ruins, don't step on my bottom line." Li Weiran laughed softly, his expression hidden under his slightly drooping hair and the glaring red silk. "Zhu Mayan, what do you think I care about? It's really bullshit. What did you say?" The person's voice became softer and softer until it could no longer be heard. Mayan couldn't help but ask. "Nothing." Li Weiran's thin lips curled into a harmless smile. "I said I was wrong, and I won't touch this little newbie anymore. Mayan, forgive me." "Screw you, little newbie." Luo Yu was about to explode. "You're the newbie. Your whole family is newbie." Mayan pulls Luo Yu back and looks at the impenetrable and impervious man with a headache. She sighs. "That's enough. You just had to barge in. What's the matter?" Li Weiran took out a Chinquan bag and threw it to Mayan. This Chinquan bag was tattered, and the seal was covered with hair. Moreover, it looked like it was the most basic kind, so it couldn't hold many things. Mayan was full of doubts when she took it. Why did this guy give her a broken Chinquan bag? What could be stored in it? However, when she probed it with her divine sense, Mayan's eyes widened. The reverse scale on the neck of the purple-scaled python, the tail of the black wood scorpion, 100 bolts of pure heart silk. She looked at Li Weiran in disbelief. "Where did you get these?" Li Weiran said proudly, "Don't worry about where I got them. Just tell me if you like them and if you need them." His tone was both smug and expectant, as if he was saying, "Come and praise me. Come and praise me." It didn't match Li Weiran's usual perverted image. Mu Yin almost couldn't come back to her senses. After a long time, she said, "How did you know I needed these?" Li Weiran smiled. "I made a copy of the list you gave Zhou Zixun." Mayan frowns. "But why are you doing this for me?" Li Weiran replied without hesitation, "I will do whatever I want. Why would I need a reason? Just say if you need it or not." Of course he needed it. These were the most important core materials for her life bond sword besides the cloud bone. However, there was no such thing as a free lunch. Furthermore, this lunch was sent over by Li Weiran. This made it impossible for her to happily eat it. "Chi Huang, what do you say?" Chi Huang, who has always been urging Mayan to collect materials for her natal sword, doesn't say anything this time. Of course, he doesn't want Mayan to accept that pretty boy's gift. However, these materials were really too difficult to find. Damn it! If he could get out of the Tian Mo-Chin space, how could this pretty boy have the chance to be attentive to him? Wait a minute. He is a dignified, ancient artifact spirit. Why would he be attentive to a stupid woman like Mayan? He saw 7 brilliance flying into a rage with himself in the space. Chapter 3296. Mu Yan's mouth twitched as she turned to look at Li Weiran. "I really need these materials. I'm willing to exchange them with something of equal value. What do you want?" Li Weiran licked his lips curling up slightly. "Can Mu Yan give me anything I want?" Mu Yan laughed coldly. "Are you an idiot? Of course not. Don't you understand the principle of equal value exchange? Li Weiran took 2 steps closer, a faint smile on his face. Since I can't exchange for anything, then forget it. As long as Mu Yin remembers that I'm by your side when you need me, that's enough. Mu Yin glared at him coldly and said slowly, "Are you sure you don't want to exchange for anything?" Li Weiran was about to say no. Mu Yin flipped her wrist, and a jade box appeared in her palm. "But I don't want to owe you a favor. The original one has been with me for many years, and I can't bear to give it away. I've cultivated a new one these days. If you need it, I'll give it to you." When the box was opened, it immediately revealed a dazzlingly beautiful branch of flowers. Dark Cloud Spirit Flower. The icy blue eyes under the red silk widened, a burning and complicated light flashing in them. His slender fingers gently took the jade box and held it in his palm. Li Weiran looked down at the delicate and beautiful flower in the box and murmured, "Do you know why I want the Dark Cloud Spirit Flower?" "Why?" Mu Yin asked casually. When she saw the expression on Li Weiran's face, her heart trembled. In the next moment, she heard the low voice again, but it sounded like it came from the distant sky. "My mother was a mortal without any talent for cultivation, but she fell in love with a heavenly lord of the immortal world. There's a difference in status between immortals and mortals. In the end, my mother was heartlessly abandoned. But my mother even dreamed of crawling back to that man's side like a dog. Even if she had to be a lowly servant, she didn't care. And the Dark Cloud Spirit Flower was the only thing that could help her realize her dream." Mu Yin was startled. "Where's your mother?" Li Weiran lowered his head slightly and closed the jade box, carefully putting it into his storage space. "Of course she's dead. After all, he was just a mortal. How could he survive in the Xioshan continent where the strong preyed on the weak? She died when I was very young." The atmosphere suddenly froze. Mu Yin doesn't know what to say for a moment. Even Luo Yu, who had just hated Li Weiran to the core, couldn't help but look at him with sympathy. "I'm sorry." After a long silence, Mu Yin finally spat out these 2 words. Li Weiran couldn't help but burst out laughing. "Mu Yin doesn't need to feel sorry. Because my mother died, I didn't feel sad at all. Instead, I felt very happy. You know, having such an incompetent, cowardly, and stupid mother is also a very troublesome thing. After he dies, I'll have one less burden. Isn't that good?" Mu Yin frowns. Li Weiran's words were extremely harsh. It could be said to be treason. She doesn't know why, but for the first time, Mu Yin doesn't feel disgusted by this youngster. Did Li Weiran really treat his mother as a burden? If that was the case, why did he plant the Dark Cloud Spirit Flower day after day? Why did he lose his composure when he saw her plant the Dark Cloud's Spirit Flower? Mu Yin sighed. "Actually, I originally planned to give this Dark Cloud Spirit Flower to you. Otherwise, she wouldn't have to waste so much effort to plant a second one. Thank you for saving Xiao Bao's life in Kangwu City." Chapter 3297. Li Weiran turned his head and looked at her in a daze. Because the red silk covered his eyes, people couldn't see his expression clearly. But soon, a gentle smile bloomed on his face. "Okay, I like this gift very much." Mu Yin said, "Who told you that this is a gift? This is to repay your debt, okay?" However, Li Weiran simply pretended not to hear what she said. He took out the jade box again and carefully stroked the pinkish-purple petals with his fingers over and over again. He was so happy that he looked like a child. Mu Yin couldn't help but have doubts in her heart again. Would the Dark Cloud Spirit Flower really not be contaminated in Li Weiran's hands? But why? Was there anything special about Li Weiran's identity? Who was his mother? Who was his father? "Hey, pervertly, what's shining on your waist?" Just as she was deep in thought, Luo Yu's voice came to her ears. Mu Yin looked up and found that there was really a flash of light on Li Weiran's waist. And the speed of the flash was getting faster and faster, as if it was extremely anxious. Li Weiran glanced at it and said casually, "Nothing? It's just some boring people and things." Chumoli's injury was basically healed after 3 days. During this period, Liberty City was busy distributing the resources plundered from the 10,000 Swords village. However, Mu Yin and Liu were extremely leisurely. Mu Yin threw all the matters that Zhou Zixuan came to ask for instructions to Chumoli. In some ways, this third senior brother of hers was an all-rounder that could stun people. From the beginning, Zhou Zixuan didn't think much of Mu Yin asking him to consult a sick and crippled man. Later, he admired Chumoli from the bottom of his heart. He looked at him as if he was looking at a high and mighty god. Those problems about the construction and development of Liberty City had troubled him for many days. But from Chumoli's mouth, they were all so simple and could be solved easily. At this moment, Zhou Zixuan was really sure. None of the senior brothers of his city lord were normal. In the future, if there was another senior brother or second senior brother, he didn't need to think about what this person was capable of. He just needed to worship them first. City Lord, fellow Taoist of the mysterious Yin Palace, requests an audience. When Butcher, who was reporting to Mu Yan about the training of the soldiers, heard this, he immediately frowned. What is the Dark Yin Palace doing here again? How many people have come this time? The person who made the report frowned with deep worry. There are a lot of people who came, and they all look very excited. Apart from fellow Taoist Beidang, there are also a few older people who seem to be Beidang Yi's elders. If we didn't stop them, they would have rushed into the city lord's mansion. What are these people from Dark Yin Palace trying to do? They had clearly made it clear before, so what was going on now? The younger one had suffered a loss, so he brought the older one to seek justice? Damn it, I'm going to summon the troops right now. They won't be able to leave this place alive. Do they really think that Liberty City is scared of the Mystic Moon Palace? Mu Yin gestured to Butcher to calm down. She stretched and slowly stood up. Where are they? Can you take me there? Miss, it doesn't matter. Mu Yin reveals a mysterious smile. Maybe it's not a bad thing. Although Mu Yin said so, Butcher is still worried. He winks at the soldier behind him. Then he and Old Guz stand on the left and right, protecting Mu Yin in the center. As soon as they arrived in front of the Six Stars Tower, they saw a few people wearing the clothes of the Dark Yin Palace, pacing back and forth in the square with a frown. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.